The old man revealed that escape was possible, but not to the world the young man knew, only to Florence. Realizing the deception, the young man was consumed by anger and confusion. The ground gave way, pulling him into darkness as unanswered questions echoed in his mind. Exhausted from walking, the man wiped the sweat from his forehead, feeling out of place in this strange environment. Doubt lingered in his mind about what had been told to him, yet curiosity pushed him to test it. Focusing, he suddenly triggered a display before his eyes, revealing information about a nearby plant. Shocked, he realized he could truly see a status window. As he examined the forest around him, strange names appeared over the plants and trees, none of which he recognized. The thought crossed his mind. This truly seemed to be another world. Surrounded by the unknown, he decided to focus on survival, carefully picking out the ones marked as edible. He cautiously tested different fruits, spitting out the ones that were inedible. Eventually, he found one identified as safe, its taste reminiscent of pistachios. Relieved, he decided to gather and keep some with him, already considering how he would carry them for later use. He experimented with weaving materials together, slowly figuring out how to make something useful. A small notification signaled his progress, confirming his effort. Holding up a sturdy bundle, he found it sufficient for now, knowing it could serve not only for carrying items, but also as a makeshift weapon if necessary. Carrying his makeshift bundle, he searched for a place to rest. At the river, he confirmed the water was safe and quenched his thirst. As he looked up, his eyes caught sight of a cave in the distance, sparking the thought of possible shelter. He spotted a cave that could provide shelter from the elements, though unease lingered about entering. Before deciding, he checked his own status, and a detailed screen appeared before him. It displayed his name, age, and abilities in the form of game-like stats. Among them, one unsettling title stood out: Corporate Slave. He examined his crude wooden club, noting its simple attributes, then cautiously approached the cave. Each step was careful, his grip tightening on the weapon as unease grew. The silence inside only deepened his tension, leaving him to wonder if something dangerous might be lurking within. A beast lunged at him from the cave's shadows, sinking its teeth into his arm. Pain and shock surged as blood spilled, the raw reality of this world hitting him harder than ever. With his heart pounding, he clutched his weapon tightly, struggling to process the danger before him. The beast pinned him down, its fangs bared and eyes glowing with menace. Panic surged as he realized this was no ordinary animal, something far beyond what existed in his world. Summoning his strength, he pushed back, fighting desperately against the creature's weight and ferocity. The creature revealed its true form, a kobold, towering with strength and glowing eyes. A status screen confirmed its power, its stats clearly surpassing his own. Gripping his wooden club, he realized this was no minor threat, like in games, but a deadly opponent. Doubt filled him as he questioned whether he could win through conventional means. He recognized that knowing the creature's stats wasn't enough to secure victory. Strategy would be key. With determination, he set his focus on disarming the kobold, aiming to knock the spiked club from its grasp before it could overpower him. The kobold lunged fiercely, but he braced himself and countered with all his strength. Struggling against its raw power, he twisted and struck hard at its arm, aiming directly at the weapon. With a desperate cry, he managed to land a solid blow, forcing the beast's grip to falter. With determination burning in his eyes, he launched a relentless assault, slashing at the kobold again and again as its health dropped dangerously low. Victory seemed within reach, until the beast retaliated with brutal force, slamming him hard and cutting off his momentum. Just as he struggled to recover, the ground shook with new footsteps. Another kobold appeared, snarling as it closed in. Exhausted and wounded, he steeled himself once more, forcing his body to move. With a desperate push, he drove his weapon forward, clashing head-on with the fresh threat. A crushing blow struck him from behind, sending pain surging through his body. Struggling to breathe, he staggered and fell to his knees, blood dripping as despair sank in. Overwhelmed, he realized he couldn't even defeat what should have been the weakest of monsters. He struck the kobold with all his might, the wooden club cracking against its face, but the creature barely faltered. Another kobold seized the opening, slamming into him and dragging him down. Blood filled his mouth as the beast's spiked weapon pierced into him, pain and dread consuming his body. Summoning the last of his strength, he swung his club down and struck a kobold's head, forcing it back with a pained cry. But his body trembled, his vision blurring from blood loss and exhaustion. Struggling to stay upright, he feared he would collapse at any moment, certain he was reaching his limit. Locked in a desperate struggle, he clashed against the kobold's strength, forcing its spiked club aside. With a surge of resolve, he tackled the beast to the ground, pinning it down as both fought fiercely for dominance, their growls and gasps mixing in the tense battle. With every ounce of strength, he drove the club down, crushing the kobold until its status dropped to 0. Gasping for air, his body trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline, he stared at his blood-stained hands in shock. For the first time, the weight of killing something in this world truly sank in. Bloodied and drained, he collapsed onto the ground beside the fallen kobolds. His body refused to move, every muscle screaming in pain. As his consciousness wavered, only one thought lingered. If this was just a dream, then why did it feel so unbearably real? His consciousness returned slowly, the pain replaced by a gentle touch against his face. Opening his eyes, he found himself lying in a bed, alive, with a kind-faced woman watching over him. Her relieved smile marked his survival. From the brink of death, a new path was about to unfold. He awoke to the sight of a young woman in a nun's habit tending to him. She explained his condition, noting that his left hand was fractured and his wounds had only been closed, not fully healed. Confused yet relieved, he tried to process her presence, wondering about her role and the place he had ended up in. The nun explained he had been found near a kobold nest in the forest. Her words stirred fragments of memory, his life before all this. He recalled walking home late at night, debating a quick meal, perhaps drinking too much. Then, in a fleeting moment, he remembered the shock of unexpectedly crossing paths with familiar faces, a scene that marked the last memory of his old world before everything changed. He remembered clearly now his director Hisaki, arm in arm with his colleague Komoda, emerging together from a hotel. Shock and anger surged through him as he pieced together the truth. The director's promotion hadn't come from merit, but from connections behind closed doors. The bitter realization made his stomach churn, leaving him with resentment toward the unfair world he had once lived in. He weighed his options carefully. If they spotted him, things could spiral out of control, especially with Komoda's vindictive nature. Hiding might protect him, but silence could also be used against him later. With a sly determination, he decided to bide his time and wait for the right chance. As he moved on, nearing home, unease gnawed at him, sensing trouble still lingered ahead. Lost in thought, he stumbled and nearly fell, his heart skipping as he caught himself. Sweat ran down his temple as unease sharpened his senses. In the dim street, his foot struck something on the ground, and the sudden realization froze him in place. Something was terribly wrong. His foot caught on an umbrella discarded on the ground, sending him crashing forward. Pain shot through him as his head slammed against the pavement, confusion overwhelming his thoughts. Panic and fear filled his lungs, and his cry echoed into the night as everything spiraled out of control. He awoke in darkness, confused and disoriented, until an old man appeared before him, speaking with authority. Unsure if it was a dream or reality, he listened as the figure urged him to understand the situation and hear his words. The old man explained that this place was a rift between worlds, not entirely separate from his own. He revealed himself as a disciple of the god Clancy, saying he had been transferring to Florence when the young man, fleeing from others, accidentally fell into the rift. The old man told him escape from the rift was possible, but only under one condition. He had to swear never to reveal anything about the old man or the existence of the rift to anyone. The old man proposed sealing their agreement with magic, ensuring silence about the rift. He explained it wasn't the flashy kind of magic that shot fire, but a binding force to prevent him from revealing the truth. Though uneasy, the young man realized the deal left him with little choice. The old man explained the seal was a contract, and in return for upholding it, he would grant a boon. He offered powers beyond imagination, speed, knowledge, wealth, or overwhelming magic. The young man's mind reeled at the possibilities, stunned when even something like X-ray vision was mentioned. Kay's thoughts drifted briefly toward the temptation of X-ray vision, but he quickly dismissed it, realizing he needed to choose carefully. Memories of workplace corruption surfaced, fueling his resolve. Whether dream or reality, he decided the deal was worth accepting, focusing instead on testing the true limits of the boon being offered. Kay resolved to accept the terms, asking for the power to analyze the status of people and objects. He knew knowledge alone might not always be enough, but ignorance was far more dangerous. The old man, intrigued, questioned whether Kay truly understood the weight of such information. A glowing magic circle appeared before Kay as the old man confirmed the deal. In exchange for his silence, Kay would gain the chosen power. Once the seal was complete, the old man warned, Kay would be cast out from this place. The old man revealed one final detail: Kay would be sent to Florence along with him. Though the promise was to release him from the rift, it was never said where he would end up. With no choice, Kay was cast into the unknown, cursing the deception as he fell. Kay checked his status and noticed the shackles of Clancy LV-99, proof of the pact the old man had mentioned. Realizing he had indeed fallen into this world, he tested the disciple's name aloud, but the nun by his side only explained that her role was to care for him. The priest who saved him was Father Rodney of the Church of Clancy. Kay took in the name, connecting it to the mysterious figure who had bound him. Kay introduced himself as Kay Arakawa, thanking the nun for saving and caring for him. She noted she had never heard of such a name. While speaking, Kay felt pain from his injuries but kept his true origin hidden, realizing the seal was working. Instead, he vaguely explained he came from far away, careful not to reveal anything unnecessary. Aslina changed Kay's bandages while he asked her some questions. She told him to just call her Aslina and encouraged him to ask freely. Kay, still feeling groggy, asked how long he had been asleep. She explained it had been 4 days since he was brought there, meaning he had slept for 3 full days. Kay then asked to know exactly where they were. Aslina explained that they were in the town of Callis, northeast of Harland. To the east lay the Lumen Forest, where kobolds had a dangerous nest. She said that Father Rodney found Kay wounded there after receiving a divine sign from Clancy, which led him into the forest. Kay thought her explanation was clear and noted how she was as intelligent as she was beautiful. Curious, he asked how they managed to find him in such a rarely visited place. Aslina explained that Father Rodney had found Kay near the kobold nest, surrounded by signs of battle and red kobolds. Kay was surprised he had done this alone, recalling a strange feeling from that moment. When he asked about Rodney's whereabouts, she said he was out but would return by evening. She encouraged Kay to rest, promising to bring him food, while Kay thanked her for the information, though unease lingered in his thoughts. Kay observed Aslina's status, noting she was a level 15 cleric with light affinity and healing magic. He realized that magic power appeared directly in the status system, and wondered if multiple elemental types could exist in one person. The idea intrigued him, opening questions about the true extent of abilities in this world. Kay was visited by Father Rodney, the priest who had saved him. Rodney expressed relief at seeing him awake, his demeanor calm and refined. Kay felt uneasy in the presence of such a gentlemanly figure, but still expressed his gratitude for being rescued from the brink of death. Rodney humbly replied that he was simply glad the healing had worked. Kay asked if Rodney always entered the forest alone. Rodney explained that while he didn't patrol daily, watching over the forest was part of his duties. Kay noted how fortunate it was that Rodney had found him. Considering the danger, Rodney agreed, calling it the guidance of Clancy, and expressed relief at Kay's recovery and ability to speak without issue. Kay apologized for being a burden, but Rodney reassured him, saying helping the sick was part of their teachings. As Rodney placed his hand near Kay, a warm light eased Kay's pain, making him realize it was magic. Rodney explained that he couldn't fully heal him, and that the rest of the recovery would depend on Kay, urging him to rest in the meantime. Kay secretly activated his analysis ability on Rodney, revealing his status. Despite much of it being hidden, one thing stood out. Rodney was at level 42, far stronger than expected. Shocked, Kay realized just how powerful and mysterious this priest truly was. Kay was stunned by what he saw. Rodney's level was 42, yet most of his status remained hidden, even from the analysis skill that was supposed to reveal everything. The overwhelming strength and mystery behind Rodney left Kay unsettled. Rodney, calm and composed, simply told him to rest, leaving Kay no choice but to comply for now. 2 days later, Kay was astonished to find he could move his injured arm again. Both Rodney and Aslina were surprised by his rapid recovery. Aslina noted his incredible vitality, attributing it partly to her healing and Rodney's power, though Kay realized the real cause was likely the skill, strength recovery 4. 2 more days later, Kay's wounds were completely healed, astonishing Aslina. Kay expressed his desire to visit the town, but she explained the complications. Entering required an identity card issued by the mayor or registration with the Adventurer Guild. She admitted she couldn't recommend adventuring given his memory issues, leaving Kay to realize his only option was the guild, since no mayor would grant a card to a stranger like him. Kay realized it was too risky to wander alone without understanding how the world worked. On top of that, he had no money and couldn't even pay for his treatment, which left him feeling guilty. Aslina reassured him not to worry, suggesting instead that he could repay by helping with work at the church. Relieved, Kay eagerly agreed. determined to contribute in any way he could. Kay spent his days working hard at the church, carrying water and doing physical labor. Each task not only helped him repay his debt, but also strengthened his body, with his stats steadily improving. Realizing that he could train while earning his keep, he began to see this place as a surprisingly good environment to grow stronger. During a meal, Kay asked Atharina to teach him how to use magic. She explained that only those with aptitude and power could wield it, with just 1 in 4 people having the ability. Although unsure if he had the talent, Kay was determined to try. Atharina, smiling warmly, agreed to help him learn. Atharina explained that magic power was tied to consciousness, and concentration was the key to using it in any situation. Kay, confident in his focus from his past life, felt prepared. She then promised to demonstrate the most basic form of magic, focusing intently as he watched her. Atharina demonstrated light magic, focusing on her fingertip until it glowed softly. She explained it was a form of life magic, usable by anyone regardless of their attribute. She told Kay to concentrate on his fingertip, imagine a light, and then try it himself. Kay focused on his fingertip, feeling a strange energy he had never experienced in his previous world. He tried to visualize light forming, but Atharina corrected him, telling him to keep his eyes open and imagine the light appearing before them. Determined, Kay prepared to try again. Kay concentrated deeply, focusing all his will on his fingertip. Suddenly, a burst of light exploded from him, filling the room with a brilliant glow. Atharina, shocked and covering her mouth in awe, watched as Kay successfully manifested magic for the first time. Kay's fingertip glowed brightly, and he stared in disbelief before realizing he had succeeded. Relief washed over him as the light dimmed slightly, but the excitement in his chest only grew. He grinned, proud to discover that he too was among the rare few capable of wielding magic. Atharina watched quietly, acknowledging his success as he celebrated his newfound power. Atharina explained the next step, controlling magic power. Kay experimented, focusing on the light at his fingertip, making it grow larger and then smaller. She added that beyond controlling size, maintaining the light was also important, though she admitted she wasn't very skilled at it herself. Kay realized how difficult it was to keep the magic stable when he couldn't see it, noticing how the glow faded as soon as his focus wavered. Kay listened carefully as Atharina explained the structure of magic. Beyond life magic, there were the 4 elemental attributes: fire, water, wind, and earth, along with light and darkness. Healing fell under light magic, something she could teach. Kay reasoned that if it came to water magic, Rodney would be the right person to guide him, considering his own affinity. Atharina suddenly questioned Kay, asking how he knew Rodney could use water magic. Realizing he had spoken carelessly, Kay quickly tried to cover it up, claiming he only thought water magic would make daily chores, like carrying water, easier. His excuse made Atharina laugh, calling him unexpectedly lazy, which eased the tension as Kay laughed along, relieved. At night, Kay sat outside practicing his magic, focusing on controlling the light at his fingertip. The glow flared up wildly, making him realize it wasn't easy to adjust. He remembered Atharina admitting she wasn't skilled at control either, and now he understood why. Despite struggling, each attempt gave him experience, gradually raising his magic power bit by bit. A week later, Kay's training showed progress. By picturing a space in his mind, he managed to keep the light stable even when he couldn't see it directly. His control improved, and he felt confident he was finally grasping the technique. Atharina watched in awe, surprised at how quickly he had advanced. Kay's quick mastery of light magic left Atharina amazed, remarking she had never seen someone learn it so fast. Kay, though surprised himself, tried to play it off. She explained that the next step would be healing magic, though its difficulty would depend on his attributes. When asked if he knew his own, Kay hesitated, debating whether or not to reveal the truth. Kay admitted he couldn't remember his attribute, prompting Atharina to explain how attributes work. She told him that if his attribute was fire, for example, he wouldn't be able to use water magic, and similarly, wind and earth opposed each other. She advised him to check at the guild when possible, since attributes determine what magic can be learned. Kay reflected on how useful magic is in everyday life and appreciated having a good teacher, while Atharina reassured him that learning magic was worthwhile, no matter the circumstance. While practicing light magic in his room, Kay wondered if it was possible to channel light into objects instead of just his body. His eyes fell on a candlestick nearby, even though it had no candles. Concentrating, he focused on the thought of the candlestick glowing with light. With determination, he tried to direct his magic outward, imagining the stand itself shining brightly. Kay managed to channel his light magic into the candlestick, making it glow brightly. Shocked but thrilled, he realized he had succeeded. Yet, the ease of his progress made him question how smoothly everything was going. Reflecting, he acknowledged that his rapid growth was thanks to the ability given to him by the old man. Even so, he reminded himself that to truly survive in this world, he needed to continue training, strengthen his body and magic, and become much stronger. Kay opened his status screen and noticed how much his stats had improved thanks to helping at the church and his magic training. Still, he felt uneasy seeing how low his magic power was, despite having magician-like stats, worried it might mean he could use strong spells but run out too quickly. While examining the details, he suddenly realized something strange. Clancy's contract level was going down. Surprised, he wondered when that change had happened and what it could mean. Kay studied the explanation of Clancy's contract, realizing it was a divine blessing that activated in moments of crisis, restoring life to its bearer. He thought back to when he was attacked by the kobold, understanding now that it wasn't his own recovery skill that saved him, but the contract intervening. At first, he believed it only restored his strength, but the truth was deeper. The blessing seemed to recover life itself, protecting him in a way far greater than he had imagined. Late at night, Kay lay restless in bed, his thoughts heavy. He realized that if things continued as they were, he wouldn't be able to face the dangers that awaited him in the future. The idea of relying only on blessings unsettled him deeply. He didn't want to depend on something beyond his control. With a serious gaze, he acknowledged that he wasn't strong enough yet. Determination burned within him, and he resolved firmly that to survive in this world, he needed to grow stronger, no matter what it took. Kay stood firm in the forest, facing the kobolds head-on. He concentrated, gathering magic into his hand with determination. Confident in his growing strength, he believed that soon these monsters would no longer pose a threat to him. With a swift motion, he released the energy, aiming directly at his enemy. The blast struck with force, piercing through the kobold and radiating a bright light. One after another, his attacks cut through the monsters, proving the results of his training and his resolve to survive and grow stronger. Kay experimented further with his magic, shaping the glowing energy in his hand. He decided to call the condensed form a magic ball. As he manipulated it, he expanded the energy outward, transforming it into a flat surface. The shimmering construct solidified into a barrier before him. Pleased with the result, he gave it a name, Magic Wall. Though simple, this new form allowed his magic to become defensive, protecting him as well as attacking. With this breakthrough, his stamina increased, a sign that his training and creativity were steadily making him stronger. After sustaining a wound during his training, Kay calmly applied the healing magic he had learned from Athrena. The injury closed quickly, showing how effective the spell was for wounds of that scale. He then checked his status screen, noting how much his magic power and SP had diminished after repeated use. Realizing the only way to restore his energy was by allowing time to pass, he decided it was best to conclude his exploration of the forest for the day. With steady footsteps, he made his way back, satisfied with the progress he had achieved. Kay's training brought him to level 26, but kobolds no longer give much experience. He considers moving to stronger grounds for faster growth, yet a lingering unease makes him cautious. Trusting his instincts, he decides it's wiser to remain near the church for now. The man sat in silence, his thoughts circling around a single grim possibility. Though he tried to convince himself otherwise, his mind returned to the same conclusion. He had once believed himself lucky, but as he examined the evidence before him, a bitter truth surfaced. His gaze hardened, reflecting the cruel irony of his situation. In that moment, he knew with certainty his luck was the worst. Over 3 months had passed since his arrival, and the man reflected that it was finally time to move forward. His appearance had changed, his once weary look now replaced by a more refined presence. As he stepped out, he was greeted warmly, his transformation drawing notice. Confidence showed in his expression, a quiet acknowledgement of the effort he had put into bettering himself. He followed the man's movements, noticing the fire burning nearby. Something about the scene stirred unease within him, though at the time he couldn't fully grasp it. As his supposed benefactor walked away, the suspicion lingered. Watching him leave, the truth began to take shape in his mind. A strange window appeared before his eyes, revealing Rodney's status. Though parts of it remained hidden, he could still make out unknown skills and titles. The numbers and traits were unusual, almost chaotic, making it hard to believe this man had survived through sheer willpower alone. As he focused his magic into his eyes, the details sharpened. leading him to realize his own parameters might affect how much information he could perceive from another's status. He examined Rodney's status carefully, noting the unusual ability to control opposing elements like fire and water. Such a trait was exceedingly rare among humans, hinting that his attribute was something beyond the ordinary. Some details stood out as strange: an unusually high charm level with unclear meaning, and a mysterious title tied to someone named Arabera. The revelations left him questioning what kind of power Rodney truly possessed. During a quiet meal, he turned to Athrena with a serious expression and asked about the name that had been troubling him. Arabera. The moment the word left his lips, her hands trembled, and the bowl she held slipped, shattering against the floor, her reaction revealing the weight that name carried. The room fell into a heavy silence after his question. Athrena lowered her head, clasping her hands as if in prayer, her lips moving in hushed murmurs. Unease washed over him, realizing he may have touched on something forbidden. The weight of her reaction only deepened the mystery surrounding the name. Her expression hardened, warning him never to speak that name so carelessly. She demanded he erase it from his thoughts, her glare sharp with urgency. He explained he only sought its meaning, though her reaction revealed the weight behind it. To her people, that name belonged to an evil god, one feared and shunned, a truth that left him unsettled. He found himself troubled by the revelation, caught in a situation he hadn't expected. The thought lingered Rodney, marked as a priest of a god Athrena had called evil. Doubts filled his mind, as he wondered if she even realized Rodney's true allegiance. Yet, the more he reflected, the less it seemed so straightforward. His eyes drifted back to his own status, where one of his titles named him a follower of Clancy, deepening the unsettling connection. He kept watch on the building where Rodney was supposed to be resting, uncertain if his target had moved or not. Determined, he resolved to stay vigilant, whether it took tonight or the days ahead. As silence settled over the area, he approached cautiously, wondering if Rodney was asleep. With his resolve firm, he prepared himself. This was the moment to act. Under the night sky, he approached a grand, silent mansion. The gates creaked as his target slipped inside, leaving him tense in the shadows. The building loomed dark, every light extinguished, giving no hint if anyone truly resided within. Gripping his weapon tightly, he felt the weight of uncertainty, but knew he had to press forward. In the darkness of the forest, he barely evaded an attack, his blade slashing through the air in defense. His breath quickened as the danger closed in, forcing him to react instinctively. With tension sharp in his eyes, he braced himself as a looming presence suddenly emerged before him. He blocked the strike with all his strength, the impact forcing him back but holding firm. A shadowy figure wavered before him, its presence unmistakably hostile. His mind raced. If someone was cooperating with Rodney to target him, there could only be one possibility. The thought chilled him as he clenched his teeth. Athrena. He moved quickly, dodging a swift attack and countering with a sharp toss. Seizing his chance, he reached out, determined to grab hold of his opponent before they could react again. The confrontation grew more intense, both locked in a struggle for control. He quickly realized his opponent wasn't Athrena. The figure was taller, with a more rugged build, and a different silhouette. Even in the dim light, he could tell the difference, confirming it with a quick touch. The woman assured him it was only a trick of light magic, revealing her true presence. The mysterious woman revealed herself, holding a glowing sword and demanding answers. He tried to play it off, calling himself just an ordinary guy, but she wasn't convinced no normal person could use light magic like that. With tension between them, she insisted he reveal his true identity. He kept calm, joking that he was just a guy with a few tricks, even as she threatened him with her glowing blade. She pointed out his unusual magic and skill, clearly not buying his ordinary act. He teased her in return, saying her abilities and appearance were impressive. Confident, he claimed that even without magic, he wouldn't lose if it came to a fight. She raised her sword, saying she might have to kill him, but noticed he seemed at odds with Rodney rather than his ally. Her suspicion grew, realizing he didn't know her identity. This confirmed to her that he wasn't working with Rodney, and she demanded to know who he really was. He introduced himself as Kei Arakawa, explaining his current role at the church and hinting that he might end up fighting Rodney if things escalated. The woman, revealing her name as Grace, admitted she was monitoring Rodney too. With their interests aligned, they agreed to share information, setting the stage for a cautious alliance. Kay wondered if Grace was after Rodney because he was pretending to be a priest while actually hiding evil intentions. He realized the information he could share was limited due to his amnesia, so a true exchange might not help either of them much. Still, he felt determined to move forward, thinking he could handle the situation regardless. He checked Grace's status and saw she was a rare magic knight with 3 elemental attributes, a combination even more unusual for someone also skilled with a sword. Her strength stood out, but what really caught his eye was her unique title, Urbane's Treasure Keeper. He also noticed her cooking and housework skills were surprisingly high, a contrast to her fierce appearance. Kay asked if he could call her Grace, which she agreed to. He held back from explaining how he knew certain things, then asked if she knew Rodney's strength and about his connection to Arabella. Grace replied that if Rodney really was a dark disciple of Arabella, then he was the one she'd been searching for. Kay and Grace realized their goals matched. Both wanted to uncover Rodney's true motives. Kay suggested they team up until they found the answers. With a handshake, they formed an alliance, each ready to face whatever came next together. Grace noticed Kay's wandering eyes and called him out, causing him to get flustered and quickly deny it. Embarrassed, he apologized. She reminded him that since they were now allies, they needed to rely on each other and take things seriously. They entered the mansion and found the door unlocked. Kay thought it was careless, but Grace realized Rodney was actually luring them inside on purpose. Since searching the entire place would take too long, she suggested checking the southwest section of the second floor. Where nobles usually had their bedrooms, Rodney was likely there. Grace moved up the stairs silently, using a special technique called secret steps. Kay, impressed, asked if she could teach him after everything was over. She agreed, promising to share her skills. Feeling optimistic, Kay believed that making plans for after the battle gave them extra motivation to succeed. Kay used his status appraisal skill to check through the doors, confirming Rodney's presence inside. He told Grace with certainty that Rodney was there, and she trusted his judgment as they prepared to confront him. Kay explained that Aslina was a girl from the church who had looked after him. He wasn't sure if she was on Rodney's side or being held captive, but her level was low. With determination, Kay said he would take on Rodney, and Grace acknowledged his resolve, asking what his next move would be before they advanced. Grace told Kay her first step was to figure out if Rodney was truly an enemy. If so, she would look for a chance to escape if he proved too strong for them. Kay, determined, promised to beat Rodney. They wished each other luck before moving forward with their plan. Before the fight, Grace decided to let Kay take the lead. She said her main goal was to find out if Rodney was truly an enemy, and if he was, to defeat him or escape if things went wrong. Kay stayed determined, promising he would beat Rodney. They wished each other luck and got ready for what was next. Grace led the way as they entered the lavish room, with Kay right behind her. As they moved further in, something caught her attention, causing her to pause and look concerned. Kay noticed her hesitation and quietly asked what was wrong. Kay was shocked and angry as he entered, finding Rodney in a compromising situation. Rodney, calm and unfazed, questioned Kay's reasons for coming. Kay called him out for his actions, hinting at the contradiction of being both a priest and an apostle while behaving this way. Rodney just shrugged it off, acting like his position made him above reproach. Kay confronted Rodney, admitting he'd always found him suspicious. He recalled how Aslina told him Rodney had saved him in the forest, and he believed it at first. But returning to the scene later, Kay figured out the truth. Rodney hadn't saved him. He had tried to kill him. The tension in the room grew as the truth came to light. Kay explained that after the fight with the kobolds in Lumen Forest, he didn't die despite his fatal wounds, because Clancy's contract restored his life. He realized that both Aslina and the Red Kobold had something in common. They'd both been influenced or charmed by Rodney's skill. Even though he'd been moved to the church, the real reason he survived was this strange power at play. Rodney, hearing this, was curious about what Kay had discovered. Rodney commented on Kay's abilities, hinting he might have a special power. Kay joked back, saying it wasn't as special as carrying a grown man out of the forest. Rodney explained that light magic isn't just for healing. Light Gate can teleport people. But Grace pointed out Rodney couldn't use it because his attribute is darkness, not light, and his healing is actually water-based, not light magic. Kay realized he can't see the full status of people with higher levels than him, only parts he's experienced or learned before. He assumed all healing magic used the light attribute, and noticed Aslina really does use light magic for recovery. Kay figured out Rodney can't use the light attribute, so he uses water attribute for healing. After getting healed, Grace realizes the truth about Rodney after connecting the dots from Kay's deductions. She concludes that Rodney is a dark magus, an apostle of Arabella who uses the dark attribute and the powers of Clancy. She calls him a demon, the enemy she's been searching for. Kay and Grace get ready to fight, and Rodney looks back at them, showing that the confrontation is about to start. Rodney explains how he tracked Kay by sensing Clancy's power in the Lumen Forest. He noticed that Kay and his companion were not ordinary people, as they were able to resist his charm power easily. By following the unusual presence, Rodney managed to locate Kay. Though Kay was wearing clothes Rodney had never seen before, Rodney had prepared to finish Kay off by charming a kobold to attack him. But after the fight, Kay's wounds mysteriously healed quickly, even while unconscious, showing a power that surprised Rodney. Rodney suddenly shifts his attack toward Aslina, who is completely defenseless. The scene shocks everyone watching, as the danger to her becomes clear. Grace warns Kay as Rodney's body starts to transform demonic features and markings covering his back. Kay quickly realizes Rodney might have planned this from the start, using Aslina as bait to draw them in before unleashing his transformation. The whole situation suddenly feels like a setup. Kay remembers everything Aslina did for him, and realizes she was sacrificed as part of Rodney's plan. With Rodney fully transformed and advancing toward them, Grace quickly moves to defend as the fight is about to start. Grace and Kay both face off against the demonized Rodney. Rodney lunges at Kay with sharp claws, aiming to attack him directly. Kay quickly reacts, raising his hand to block the incoming strike, showing he's ready to fight back. Grace rushes in, launching a quick attack at the demon Rodney with her sword. Rodney blocks her strike with his arm, smiling confidently, showing he's not worried about her move. Grace doesn't hesitate and stays aggressive, pushing the fight forward. Rodney and Grace circle each other, both tense and ready to strike. Grace tries to land another hit, but Rodney counters with a burst of power. The attack knocks Grace back and leaves her with a burn on her shoulder. She winces from the pain, realizing Rodney's demon form is no joke. Kay and Grace team up, trying to hold their ground against Rodney, who's now fighting as a demon. Kay notices how tough Rodney is, and even Rodney admits the two work well together for being so unprepared. Grace goes in with another attack, but Rodney blocks it with his arm, showing off both his power and confidence. The fight is intense, and it's clear Rodney is a difficult opponent. Kay dodges an attack and tries to get close, but Rodney blocks him with a powerful swipe. Grace jumps in and attacks, but Rodney is still holding his ground, showing no signs of slowing down. Kay then uses his magic, launching a water-based attack straight at Rodney, shouting as he does it, hoping to break through Rodney's defenses. Kay is surprised that he managed to use such a strong spell, considering he only started using magic a few months ago when he was still just a regular office worker. Rodney seems mostly unfazed by the attack, and even Grace's physical strikes aren't making much difference. Kay quickly realizes that their attacks aren't strong enough, and he starts wondering how many more magic attacks it would take to actually hurt Rodney, since he can't use anything stronger. The situation is looking bad for them. Rodney, now fully in his demon form, launches a fast and brutal attack at Kay and Grace. Kay barely manages to block the blow, but is clearly pushed back by the force. Grace looks worried as Rodney taunts them, asking if that's all they've got. Kay is visibly struggling, showing just how outmatched they are right now. Rodney charges at Kay with full force, looking even more dangerous than before. Kay tries to defend himself, but the attack is too quick. At the last second, Grace jumps in and blocks the strike, protecting Kay. Both of them look tense, barely holding back the blow together. Grace manages to block Rodney's attack, but the force pushes her and Kay back. Kay catches her, stopping her from falling. Rodney quickly recovers and gets ready to attack again, showing no sign of letting up. Grace and Kay are on edge, realizing how tough their opponent really is. Kay learns that normal attacks won't hurt a demon, only magic or a weapon with magic can. Grace, worn out, encourages him since he can fill the sword with light magic. Kay accepts the plan, getting ready to try breaking through Rodney's defense with this new approach. Kay rushes in, sword glowing with light magic, trying to break through Rodney's guard. Rodney taunts him, looking confident, but something unexpected starts to happen. Some kind of magic or power activates right in front of him, catching his attention. Kay uses his light magic to blind Rodney for a moment. Rodney gets frustrated because he can't see, giving Kay a chance to move in and land a hit right as Rodney tries to recover his vision. The fight is getting more intense, with both sides going all out. Grace jumps in right after Kay's move, catching Rodney off guard and landing a solid strike. Rodney is clearly frustrated, calling out their tactics as sneaky, but he's forced to stay on the defensive. The fight is turning against him, as both Kay and Grace coordinate their attacks. Kay focuses and tells Grace to pour as much magic as possible into her sword. Grace yells out, channeling all her power into the attack. She lands a hit right on Rodney, causing a burst of energy and actually managing to hurt him. The tables start to turn as their teamwork and magic finally break through Rodney's defenses. Grace lands a strong hit, but Rodney manages to counterattack and injures her. Kay quickly grabs her, shouts for a retreat, and the two make a fast escape down the stairs and out of the room, barely ahead of danger. They're both on edge, but Kay keeps moving, making sure Grace gets away with him. Grace and Kay realize they can't escape. The way out is blocked by a barrier. Grace is injured and her sword is broken from the last attack. Kay can use magic to restore her HP, but he can't stop her bleeding or bring back the blood she lost. Both know that their only option is to defeat Rodney if they want to make it out alive. Kay and Grace talk about their options. Grace doesn't have a spare sword, so they'd have to fight using only magic. Kay knows their chances of winning like that are super low. They hear Rodney getting closer and start to panic, but Grace hints that she might have an idea, a way out that could give them a chance. Grace tells Kay there's a method they can use, but it'll drain all her magic, so she won't be able to fight after. She's a bit embarrassed, and tells Kay he needs to have resolve for this. Before they start, she asks Kay not to let himself get distracted by any improper feelings. Kay's confused, but the tension is high since they don't have time to waste. Kay decides to trust Grace's plan since they have no other options, thinking that if he hesitates, he might not survive anyway. As Grace starts chanting a spell Kay's never heard before, he wonders what's about to happen but tries to stay focused, knowing it's not the time to get distracted. Grace simply says she understands and prepares herself for what's next. Kay suddenly pulls out two swords, clearly surprised by what just happened. Grace, still supporting him, looks up as he realizes these swords have just appeared from her spell, giving them a shot at fighting back. Grace summons two legendary swords, Francesca, the Sword of the Flame Emperor, and Viola, the Sword of the Ice Emperor. She tells Kay that these demon swords are the only weapons that can defeat Rodney in his demon form. Smiling, she trusts Kay to finish the fight and end Rodney. Kay checks the stats of the two swords and is surprised by their high attack power. Viola is even stronger than Francesca, but it drains his SP quickly. He realizes that his current weapons are on another level compared to what he used before. Rodney, now fully transformed, starts to approach, while Kay gets ready for the fight with both demon swords. Kay gets ready to fight, realizing that the swords drain his SP really fast, and he can't keep it up for long. Rodney recognizes the swords as rare items and guesses that Kay's using their power and his own strength. Rodney is also taking time to regenerate his arm, which explains why he's not attacking yet. Kay thinks about his own limits, but gets determined to fight since he has sword skills. Rodney, confident, says that power will become his either way, and the fight is about to start. Kay launches his attack, thinking it's time to see what happens. He plans his moves. After Rodney blocks the Flame Emperor's sword, Kay aims to keep him busy so Rodney can't use his dangerous right hand. Kay follows up with the Ice Emperor's sword in his left hand and gets ready to unleash a magic ball, trying to keep up the pressure and not give Rodney any chance to counter. Kay focuses, gripping both swords tightly and charging forward with determination. The energy around him surges as he swings, aiming for a decisive blow, catching even his opponent by surprise. Kay surprises the demon by quickly attacking with both swords, catching him off guard. The demon reacts in pain, clearly not expecting Kay's sudden move, and stumbles back, showing that the attack actually worked. Kay keeps attacking, landing a powerful blow with both swords. The demon tries to block, but Kay keeps up the pressure, forcing him back and making him scream in pain. Kay doesn't let up, going all in to keep the upper hand in the fight. Kay keeps up his assault, swinging both swords at the demon. The demon tries to block, but the attacks push him back, and he starts to take damage, showing clear signs of struggling. The demon tries to defend with his arm, but blood starts gushing out, showing that Kay's attacks are breaking through his defenses. The demon is shocked as his arm starts to break apart from the attack, unable to believe the strength of the swords Kay is wielding. Even Kay is surprised by the power he's unleashing. The demon realizes these swords, Urbane's lost weapons, are way more powerful than he expected. Kay faces off against the demon, who tries to use a dark energy attack. For a moment, Kay remembers the girl who entrusted him with the swords. He charges at the demon with determination, yelling Rodney's name as he goes for an all-out strike. Kay lands a direct hit on the demon Rodney, slashing across his body with full force. Rodney screams in pain as the attack cuts deep, showing that the swords are working against him. Rodney starts bleeding heavily from the wound and looks shocked, realizing the damage is way beyond what he expected. His body is burning and breaking apart from the inside, showing that the demon swords are really working against him. Kay stands close, making sure the attack finishes the job. Rodney's HP drops fast with each hit, going from over 2,000 down to 0. He looks weaker and struggles to stand, but the damage from the swords is too much. In the end, he completely runs out of strength and collapses. Rodney's body turns to dust and fades away, signaling the end of the fight. The protagonist is still tense, but Grace reassures him that Rodney is gone. Demons don't really die, they just disappear. Holding the demon swords, he's a bit shocked by how strong they are, thinking their power goes way beyond what he's used to. The whole battle feels surreal and ended faster than he expected. All thanks to the sword's overwhelming strength. Grace quietly asks Kay if she can take the swords back. As she retrieves them, she thinks about her fate. She's meant to chase after demons. With a calm and thankful look, she tells Kay that without his help, defeating Rodney wouldn't have been possible. She gives him a soft smile and says she's grateful to him. Kay laughs and says that everything's settled now. He mentions that he fought for his own reasons and that there was no future for him unless Rodney was defeated. He tries to lighten the mood, saying at least his eyes had a little feast. Grace, still a bit shy, listens as Kay brings up her promise to teach him a bunch of things. But before that, he says he needs to take care of something. Grace, looking curious, asks what he's planning to do next. Kay sits by the river and quietly apologizes to Aslina for not realizing things sooner. He thinks maybe he should be praying to Clancy instead. Grace stands nearby, watching over him. Kay's mind drifts. He knows he shouldn't worry about his old job, friends, or family now, but he can't help it. He wonders if he just gave up on his old life and started going with the flow in this new world. He admits to himself that maybe he's just gotten too used to everything happening here. He doesn't know if he'll ever make it back to his own world, or if he'll just keep living in this one. Either way, he figures all he can do is try to make the best of his situation, since worrying won't change anything. Grace, a bit hesitant, asks Kay if he loved Aslina, admitting it might not be the best time to bring it up. Kay says no, but adds that Aslina took good care of him. Grace quietly accepts his answer and offers a prayer. Rest in peace. Kay reflects that if it weren't for Aslina, he wouldn't even know how to survive in this world. Kay teases Grace, asking if she's really that curious about his future plans. He reminds her she's already asked him that. She asks again what he'll do now. Kay explains he doesn't think he should stay. Aslina and Rodney are gone, and people wouldn't welcome a stranger at the church anyway. He jokes that at least he's healthy and feels confident he'll find a way to survive, even if he has no money or plans for what comes next. Grace points out a direction, mentioning there's a port town to the west called Ashabele, where all kinds of people gather, and they won't stand out. Kay thinks it's a good idea. Grace mentions the town has a busy adventurers guild, where they could earn money by signing up. As they talk about heading that way, Kay realizes she included him in her plans. Grace reminds Kay of her promise to teach him everything she knows. With a smile, she leads the way to their next destination. As Kay follows, he locks away his memories and looks forward to the new journey ahead. Kay and Grace arrive at the port town of Ashabel. They check out the city, heading straight for the Adventurers Guild. Kay looks a bit unsure, but he's following the usual routine for newcomers in a new place, ready to see what happens next. A few hours earlier, Grace changes into a new outfit before reaching the town, aiming to look less noticeable. But her new clothes make her stand out even more, especially compared to Kay, who feels completely overshadowed. Despite his comments, Grace seems unbothered and confident that people won't remember them after a day. Kay just silently admits he can't compete with her presence. Kay and Grace arrive at the Adventurers Guild and go up to the counter to register. They're handed a registration form and start filling it out. Kay admits he doesn't have any ID because he's from outside the country. But that's not an issue since people here often don't have identification papers. Grace also registers at the same time, and Kay realizes that there isn't a unified system like passports in this world. Kay asks Grace where she's from, and she tells him she's from a territory east of Felham. Kay stops himself from pressing further, worried she'll ask about his own origins. While filling out the registration form, he notices his age is different from his original world. He's 28, but his status here says 21. He's able to read and fill out the form thanks to his language skill, but he hesitates when it comes to writing his birthplace. Kay and Grace finish writing Felham as their birthplace on the form, though Kay feels the pressure of Grace's stare the whole time. The guild staff starts the next step, checking their magic attributes. Grace goes first and reveals she has the rare darkness attribute. Kay gets nervous as his turn comes up next. Kay nervously places his hand on the slab to check his magic attribute, but as soon as he does, the slab shines and then suddenly breaks. The staff member seems confused, asking if the device is broken and tells Kay to try again, while Grace and Kay both look awkward and unsure about what just happened. Kay tries the magic attribute test again, but the slab breaks a second time. The staff, thinking it's just faulty equipment, decides to leave that part blank. Kay, still nervous, finishes the registration. Afterward, he and Grace go over to the bulletin board to look for any useful information or job requests. Kay and Grace go through the quest board. Kay notices the quests are more detailed than he expected, making it tough to read everything. Most of the postings are requests for party members, and he finds some info about a nearby dungeon, but it's missing the important details. After checking everything, they realize there's nothing out of the ordinary for them to pick. Kay spots a simple notice on the board asking for tankers, attackers, and healers, but it's way too vague compared to the others. Grace points out that they should focus on finding a place to stay, and they head off together to sort out their lodging. Kay thinks about how Grace handles everything quickly and efficiently, almost like a secretary. Now that they have their papers, they focus on finding a place to stay and having dinner. Kay feels he should thank Grace for all her help, realizing she's been the one making sure he's taken care of. He hides the truth about his memories, but is genuinely grateful that Grace is by his side, guiding him through everything. Kay expected they'd end up in some rundown place, but they actually arrive at a pretty normal hotel. He notices the local currency is called seluje and starts comparing prices, a bit worried about spending too much. Grace points out there are cheaper options around, but those places might not be safe. She makes it clear that, even if it's a bit expensive, staying somewhere decent is worth it for the security. Kay and Grace walk through Ashbel, a busy port town where seafood is everywhere. Since fresh fish is rare inland, Grace explains that eating fish is a must when visiting a seaport. Kay is hungry after barely eating earlier, so he's glad for the chance to have a proper meal. They both decide to eat fish while they're in town. Kay and Grace sit down at a lively tavern ready to eat. Grace quickly brings up a serious question about the birthplace Kay gave at the guild. She's sharp and can tell something is off. Kay realizes he can't hide things from her, especially since being attributeless is rare here. He figures honesty is the best path if he wants any kind of real relationship with Grace. Grace then asks him directly if he's attributeless. Kay admits that he really is attributeless, which makes sense to Grace after seeing his unique magic in battle. They talk more about Kay's magic. He explains how he came up with his own spells, like Magic Ball and Magic Wall, while training in the forest. He can also use some basic lifestyle magic and a bit of healing he picked up from Ashlina. Grace is honestly impressed that he managed to learn all this on his own. Grace points out that Kay has a real knack for magic, and that if he keeps studying, he could learn a bunch of new spells. She also reminds him that he managed to enchant his sword during the fight with Rodney. Kay, still cautious, thinks it's better not to take everything at face value, but he trusts Grace's intentions. He's aware he doesn't have any special skills, just that his magic feels a bit different from others. Curious, Kay asks what kind of elemental magic Grace can use. She tells him she can use fire, wind, and dark magic. Kay brings up their promise, saying it would help a lot if Grace could teach him some elemental magic. Grace is totally up for it and agrees to help him learn. She mentions that just reading the magic books sold in stores isn't enough. The real growth comes from practicing the basic spells. Grace then remembers there's a store in town run by the Magic Guild and suggests they check it out. Kay, meanwhile, is worried about being a burden to her financially and thinks he should find a way to pay her back as soon as possible. But since he can read Florent's text, he figures studying magic from the books could actually work out pretty well for him. Kay is lying in bed, lost in thought. He knows that Grace is a magician who doesn't feel tied down by chasing fate or sticking with him. He isn't sure how long they'll be together, or if their paths will cross again once they split. So, while they're still together, he decides he needs to become an independent adventurer. He tells himself that he has to get stronger, not just for himself, but for some deeper reason. He believes he has what it takes to do it, and he's determined to make it happen. Kay wakes up and heads downstairs, where Grace is already waiting, looking elegant with her tea. The place is quiet and slow in the morning, and he notices there's no one else around. Grace greets him with a calm, "Good morning," and Kay can't help but think how graceful she seems. He sits down as she offers him some tea, realizing that by tea, she meant black tea. The mood is relaxed and kind of refined, a peaceful way to start the day. As Kay sips his tea, Grace offers to teach him how to use inventory magic, a handy skill for organizing and storing things. She explains that he'll be able to use it right away, even for large items, and hands him a pouch. Kay tries to fit a huge cloak into the small pouch, not believing it'll work, but Grace tells him not to overthink it. At first, it seems impossible, but she encourages him to try again and trust the magic. Kay figures out how to use the inventory magic by focusing on imagination, just like lighting a candlestick. With this mindset, he manages to fit the large cloak into the small pouch, surprising himself. Grace praises him for doing well and notes that he really has a knack for magic. As she puts her hair up, Kay thinks she looks even more dignified like that, but also admits she looks good either way. Kay and Grace get ready to prepare their gear before heading out to the Magic Guild store. Kay wonders if they'll need to buy both weapons and armor, and admits he doesn't have any money. Grace reassures him that he doesn't need to worry, she has enough to cover it. Kay thinks about how his lifestyle has totally changed since leaving the church. Now relying on Grace's support, Kay and Grace enter the weapons store, checking out the selection while others in the shop watch them. Kay picks up a sword, examining its balance and feel. The store owner, who seems friendly and energetic, greets them, saying he's heard from the hotel staff that this is the best weapon shop in the area. Kay tries on a cloak and sword, looking like he's ready for a new adventure, while Grace observes the scene. Grace tries on her new gear, and Kay can't help but stare, clearly impressed. He thinks her thighs are dazzling, and notices how the tunic's design makes it look like she's wearing a miniskirt. Grace stands confidently in her armor, while Kay gets flustered and tries to play it cool. The shopkeeper waves them off as they leave, both now fully equipped for their journey. Kay and Grace arrive at the Magic Guild store, which from the outside looks more like a regular bookstore. The place gives off a shady vibe compared to the lively Adventurers Guild. Grace points out the entrance is actually around the back. Once inside, they find the store almost completely empty and desolate, making it feel even more sketchy. Kay notices jars filled with weird-looking things, which Grace explains are magic catalysts, though she recommends not thinking too much about what's inside. The store doesn't seem to have any shop assistants around, so they start looking around on their own. Kay realizes the place isn't really a specialized magic bookstore, but more like a regular bookstore that happens to carry a lot of magic books, mixed in with unrelated ones. Kay finds a magic book on the shelf called The Comprehensive Beginner's Guide to All Elemental Magic. He asks Grace to stay put while he grabs it. After flipping through, he confirms it's a genuine magic book and says he found something useful. Grace seems a bit caught off guard by how close they got, but she plays it off and asks what's wrong, though she says it's nothing. Kay spends about half an hour gathering a stack of magic books, including guides on elemental magic, enhancement, and enchantment. After searching the store, he realizes he hasn't seen any shop assistant. He calls out to see if anyone is there, and suddenly, a mysterious woman in a cloak appears, sliding the door open and entering the room. Kay thinks to himself that this woman doesn't look like a normal shop assistant. She casually asks if he's planning to buy the books. She then notices Kay's robe, questions if he's a healer, and asks if they're adventurers. Kay confirms they are. She seems a bit blunt and uninterested, and also makes a sarcastic comment about RPGs and healers always wearing white robes. The woman looks at Kay and says he doesn't seem like a healer, even though he claims he can use healing magic. Kay explains he's not really a healer, but he knows some healing spells. Grace tries to remind Kay about his books, but he gets distracted, thinking the woman is kind of rude, but can't deny she's really attractive. Kay wants to buy 3 beginner magic books, but the shopkeeper tries to charge him a high price. He thinks her attitude is kind of lazy and unbothered. Grace quickly slams the money on the counter, acting impatient with the shopkeeper's attitude. Kay notices the woman just tucks the money away in her clothes, and he thinks she could use some manners. The shopkeeper seems amused by the whole thing. Kay and Grace leave the store, books in hand, while the shopkeeper, Sylvia, tells them to come back after they've learned more. As they walk away, Kay suddenly remembers the name Sylvia, and wonders where he's heard it before. The story hints that Sylvia will be important later, maybe even joining their party. Kay keeps thinking about Sylvia, feeling like her name is familiar. While having a meal with Grace, they decide to visit a dungeon afterward. Grace explains that dungeons were once places for worship, but after being abandoned, monsters started living in them, turning them into dangerous places. Kay is curious about why people stopped using those sanctuaries in the first place. Grace explains that once a sanctuary turns into a dungeon, it becomes overrun with monsters. If left alone, these monsters will eventually spill out and threaten nearby villages. The old sanctuaries were big and complex, making them hard to maintain. But since they were built as places of worship, many villages exist around them. That's why the Adventurers Guild gives rewards for clearing out monsters, keeping both townspeople and adventurers in balance. Grace points out that there are 2 dungeons near the town. One has already been fully explored, but the other, called the Unexplored Heart of the Woods dungeon, is still untouched. The group decides to head southwest toward this dungeon, Kay thinks to himself that he's thankful for all the physical training he did at the church, since it's coming in handy for the journey. Kay and Grace arrive at the entrance of the Heart of the Woods dungeon. A man warns them that this dungeon is much tougher than the nearby North dungeon and tells them to go back if they're just looking for an easy score. Grace shows their registration and reassures him they know the risks, explaining they're only there to observe the area, not to go deep inside. She tells Kay that these warnings are just to scare off beginners. Before entering, the dungeon guide hands Kay and Grace a return magic square, which instantly teleports them back to the entrance if used inside. He says they're allowed to explore just the first floor, where monsters are weak, but warns that deeper floors have stronger enemies and traps. Grace finds the item useful. With everything explained, they head down the stairs into the dungeon, feeling a bit more prepared. Kay and Grace get ready for battle, drawing their swords as they step inside the dungeon. Grace warns him to stay alert, since even weak monsters can catch you off guard if you're not careful. Kay promises to support her. She reminds him that the dungeon is a place where they can freely test out magic, so he should feel free to experiment and learn. Grace charges ahead, quickly taking down monsters with her sword before Kay even gets a chance to do anything. Kay just watches, realizing that with Grace defeating everything in one hit, he can't even practice his magic. Kay learns about how adventurers prove they defeated monsters in the dungeon. Instead of monster bodies, only Yorishiro, strange coin-like items, are left behind. Stronger monsters drop more valuable Yorishiro, and the type varies by species. Grace explains that even a pig's bone from an orc is counted as Yorishiro. Adventurers bring these items to the guild to get their reward. There's also a rule: always pick up the Yorishiro, because if left behind, it'll turn back into a monster. Kay and Grace take a break, because there are no monsters around. Kay realizes he hasn't been able to use any attack magic since Grace keeps defeating all the enemies. He decides to try enchantment magic instead, which can be practiced even when there are no enemies. He reads about protection, an enhancement spell that boosts defense by creating a barrier around the whole body. Kay tries casting the enchantment spell. He manages to create a magic wall that protects part of his body for a moment, but it disappears right away, causing a loud bang and surprising Grace. He realizes he'll need more practice to balance the strength and duration of the spell. Kay apologizes, saying he's still learning, and asks Grace not to mind him. Kay keeps practicing the enchantment spell. As he tries again, his hand glows and he finally gets the spell to activate, making his magic barrier appear for a moment. Surprised, he checks his status screen and sees the results, realizing he managed to do it right this time. Grace watches him closely as he figures it out. Kay notices that after casting the protection spell, a counter appears next to the status effect, showing how much time is left. His defense is higher, even though the effect seems to vanish instantly. He figures out that the buff lasts about 20 minutes and decreases every second. Grace is surprised by his success and points out that he might not realize how impressive it is to enchant on his first real try. Kay just says he managed the basic protection spell, feeling a bit awkward with her reaction. Grace explains that enchanting is really tough. Only about 1 in every 100 can even manage it. She says it's impressive to just read a book during a break and actually pull off the spell. Kay acts like it wasn't a big deal, wondering if that was supposed to be hard. He checks his status and doesn't see any new spells added, so he figures it might just get grouped under his general enchant skill. Grace then gets ready to move on, and Kay decides it's time to keep going too. Kay realizes that with Grace being able to take out enemies in a single hit, there's not much point in him using enchantment magic right now. After clearing the floor easily, Grace notices Kay looks a bit bored and asks if something's wrong. He says he just had a good time and is already thinking about coming back tomorrow to practice more. They decide to head back since their goal was just to check the place out this time. Kay thinks about how today's dungeon run earned them 1,200 selui, which is good money compared to being at the church. But he knows this won't happen every day, and that things will get harder as they progress. He studies enchantment magic, noting that the basic buffs like might, speed, and fortitude are all attribute-less, so the difficulty isn't high for him. If he can master these enchantments, things will get a lot easier. Kay wakes up and realizes he fell asleep while studying. After pulling an all-nighter, he managed to learn 5 spells: Might, Speed, Fortitude, Bless Body, and Bless Magic. Because he and Grace defeated Rodney, a strong enemy, they gained a lot of levels. Kay checks his status and sees his class has changed to Enchanter, but he's confused. He learned everything so fast and still doesn't really get how his abilities work. Even though this type of magic is his specialty, the pace is strange to him. Grace is surprised that Kay managed to learn 5 enchantment spells in just one night and tells him he must have real talent for it. As they walk, Kay notices that everyone is staring at them, and every party around seems to have a lot of people. He asks Grace if something happened, since he feels like they're in a strange situation, but Grace says she doesn't think they're in the wrong area. There's a commotion at the entrance to the dungeon, with people screaming and demanding answers. Kay is confused, but then notices Sylvia at the center of it all, arguing with the dungeon official. Grace recognizes her immediately, thinking, "There's no doubt about it, that's Sylvia." Sylvia is arguing with a guy in armor, demanding to know whose side he's on. The official says they can't do anything because of the rules and will have to come back again. Sylvia fires back that she's from the Mage Guild, not the Adventurers Guild, so she doesn't have to follow their guidelines. But the official stands his ground, saying the dungeon is under the Adventurers Guild's jurisdiction, so she does have to follow their rules. The dungeon's rules have changed. Now you need at least 4 people to enter, so pairs aren't allowed anymore. Kay thinks it's a shame to come all this way and not be able to enter. He wonders if Grace finds Sylvia tough to deal with, but decides it's still better to team up with them than to have to start all over. Grace looks frustrated, but they'll have to come back with a bigger party if they want to continue. Kay and Grace check the status of Sylvia and Clive, seeing that both have high levels and really good gear. Kay says there's no problem with their abilities, but Grace is worried if they'll actually fight as a team with them. That's what's on her mind. Grace is worried, but Kay points out that if they don't work together, none of them will get into the dungeon. He suggests they team up with Sylvia and Clive just to enter, then split up after. Grace agrees, realizing that if they keep arguing, nothing will move forward. Kay tries to make small talk and suggests teaming up since both parties are pairs. Sylvia recognizes them from the day before and asks if they've finished the beginner magic books. Kay is surprised by the book she has and starts to compare it to Grace's book, thinking it's hard to tell which is better. They all agree to form a 4-person team, so there's no more arguing. Sylvia says to register the party quickly, but Kay interrupts. He sets one condition before forming the party. He wants to be the party leader, which means he gets to decide if the party stays together or disbands. If everyone accepts, they'll form the party. If not, they won't. They all agree to split the reward equally between everyone. Kay adds that if the others aren't happy with how things go, he and Grace will just leave the party. Sylvia says she's fine with that, but she adds her own condition. She wants to be completely satisfied with the arrangement. Kay can tell this is going to bring problems later. Everyone draws their weapons and gets ready. The party stands together in front of the dungeon entrance. Kay asks if everyone is prepared, and with a smile he says, "Let's go," signaling the start of their dungeon adventure as a full team. The group steps into the dungeon together. Sylvia suddenly realizes she never asked for Kay's name and suggests they all introduce themselves. Kay thinks he should use buffs like might, protection, speed, and concentration on everyone since they're inside the dungeon and could be attacked at any time. Sylvia gets close and asks Kay if he's an enchanter. Kay admits he only became one recently. While they're walking, Clive, the knight, is excited to be in a party with an enchanter for the first time. He can already feel his strength going up from the buffs. Sylvia thinks things are about to get a lot more interesting. During introductions, it comes out that Sylvia and Clive are childhood friends. Kay asks how long they've been in a party together, but Clive says he's always been in a different party without Sylvia. Sylvia says she's a lone wolf and hasn't been with a party long. Kay thinks they can't count on teamwork between those two and realizes Sylvia kidnapped, or more like invited Clive into her party pretty quickly. Kay is checking his skill and notes that it's not all purpose since he can't sense areas blocked by walls, but he can see things like the material or size of doors. Grace has a reconnaissance skill, so she can lead the way, detect traps, and notice monsters ahead. She says there are several monsters nearby, about 5 or 6. The group realizes that unlike yesterday, when they faced monsters in 1s or 2s, now they have to deal with a bunch at once, so teamwork is going to matter a lot. Before entering the room, Sylvia points out that their intel might be lacking and asks if they're sure there isn't a strong enemy mixed in. Grace says it's possible. Kay tells Sylvia not to draw too much attention. Clive gets ready to protect the group with his shield, while Grace and Kay stay on guard in the back, preparing to provide backup if things go south. They're ready to face whatever's inside, as the door opens. Inside the room, they find a group of goblins, specifically 2 regular goblins, 2 hobgoblins, a goblin mage, and a goblin leader. Kay quickly calls out the enemies, warning everyone to stay alert. Sylvia looks surprised and thinks it's just goblins, but the party knows it could be more dangerous than it seems. As the goblins charge in, Kay warns everyone to stop messing around because the enemies are coming. Sylvia confidently steps forward, casting a powerful spell, saying she'll take them all out in one shot. Explosions erupt, blasting the goblins. Sylvia's magic wipes out 2 goblins at once, showing it's an area attack. But Kay realizes that Sylvia is about to be targeted directly. As goblins rush her, Clive shouts to distract them and draws their attention away, trying to protect Sylvia. Clive uses his taunt skill to draw all the goblins' attention to himself, showing the classic tank class role. While he holds them off, Kay quickly calls out for Grace to target the mage, and she sprints forward, ready to act. Grace uses Secret Step to quickly move behind the goblin mage and finishes it with backstab. Meanwhile, Sylvia casts Rocket Ball, launching a barrage of magic at the enemies. She gets a bit annoyed and calls out Clive, asking how long he's going to keep messing around. Grace slices through the goblins without hesitation, keeping her cool even as enemies surround her. Kay fires off some magic shots to help out, and Clive gets in close, slashing away at the goblins alongside Grace. In the background, Sylvia is just watching, letting the others handle things for now. After the fight, Clive says his shield took all the damage, but he's fine since his HP barely dropped, thanks to the buffs from Kay. Sylvia asks what the fuss is about, acting unbothered. Kay checks the stats and realizes just how useful it is to have a real tank in the party. Clive's defense makes a huge difference. Grace reminds Sylvia she attacked before Clive drew aggro and asks her not to do it again. Sylvia just pouts and reluctantly agrees. The group moves on after the last fight. Since it went pretty smoothly, they didn't face any tough enemies, but Sylvia did attack too early before Clive could tank. Now, they're heading to the 3rd floor of the dungeon. Grace suggests a quick break. Everyone sits down for a rest, and Kay finds it kind of weird having tea in a dungeon. Grace then calls Kay over, looking like she has something to say. Kay is having tea, joking about how fancy it feels. Sylvia comes over, curious about what's going on, and asks for a sip. She's surprised by how good it is, and even wonders if Grace used to work for nobles. Grace just brushes it off, saying it's not important right now. Kay points out Sylvia just tasted tea made by someone who's basically from a noble's household, and Grace admits it without denying it. The group finds a locked door that doesn't have a keyhole, so they think it must be sealed by magic. Grace checks for traps and monsters, but it's all clear, just a level 3 lock. Sylvia thinks there's probably valuable treasure inside. Kay points out that if they open it now, they won't be able to claim the loot for themselves, since the guild will take over the area. He also says they can safely leave and return with a guild-approved exploration team if they want to make things official. The group decides to open the door, now that they've checked everything. Sylvia uses her magic staff to unlock it. As the door opens, a thick darkness spills out from the other side. The party stands ready, and Kay asks for some light as they prepare to enter the unknown room ahead. The atmosphere turns tense as they stare into the dark space, not knowing what's waiting inside. Inside the room, the group spots a hunter gargoyle at the center, much stronger than the rest. Kay quickly identifies it as the one with the largest body. He gives out instructions. Sylvia and Grace are to use magic to reduce the number of gargoyles, but only target one at a time to avoid overwhelming Clive. Meanwhile, Grace's job is to keep healing Clive as he takes on the main threat. With their plans set, everyone gets ready to move, prepared for the tough fight ahead. The party jumps into action as monsters close in. Clive leads the front, ready to draw the enemy's focus, while Kay and the others stick close behind. Sylvia and Grace stay prepared to cast their spells as instructed, knowing that Clive's taunt skill can only reach so far. Kay quickly reminds Clive to make sure the hunter gargoyle stays focused on him if it heads their way, while everyone else works to manage the rest of the monsters and keep the group safe. The real fight is just beginning. As the monsters start to swarm, Clive puts himself in front, taunting the enemies and drawing their attention. Sylvia and the others attack from behind. While Grace supports with magic, the air fills with tension as Clive calls out to the monsters, determined to protect his team. Kay quickly heals him as the fight gets rough, keeping the front line strong as the battle ramps up. Clive holds off the gargoyles with powerful strikes, while Sylvia slashes through the enemies. Suddenly, the gargoyles begin to move slower, catching Kay's attention. He notices the shift and starts thinking Sylvia might have used some debuff magic, giving the team a much-needed advantage in the fight. Kay is surprised by how well Sylvia works with the group, realizing she'd make a solid support with a bit of help. As the battle goes on, Sylvia's slow magic keeps the enemies from attacking too fast, giving Clive time to tank and Kay to heal, making the fight way more manageable for everyone. Sylvia wants to use her AoE magic, but Kay stops her. The gargoyles have high defense, especially the hunter gargoyle, and if Sylvia uses her wide area spells, she'll pull all the aggro onto herself and get attacked. Even though her magic is strong, the enemies might resist her spells since they're earth-based, so it could turn into a drawn-out fight with Clive taking most of the hits. They have to be careful and chip away at the enemies without taking too much risk. After about 20 minutes, the group has managed to cut the number of gargoyles in half. Suddenly, the remaining gargoyles change their focus and target, catching the group off guard. Sylvia and Grace keep attacking with magic in close combat, trying to keep up as the enemies start getting more aggressive. Clive spots danger and yells a warning as Sylvia is suddenly surrounded by gargoyles. She quickly turns and starts casting magic, but the situation escalates, and the monsters close in on her, forcing Sylvia to act fast. The party scrambles as the enemies shift their attack pattern. Kay quickly jumps in to protect Sylvia, blocking a direct attack from one of the monsters with his arm. Without hesitation, he counters and lands a solid hit, stabbing the enemy and shifting the momentum of the fight back to their party. Grace and the others are still fighting off the monsters, but Clive's taunt skill is starting to wear off, and it's getting tougher to keep casting magic. Grace blocks an attack, staying focused under pressure. The battle is intense. Her clothes even get ripped during one of the enemy's swipes, but she keeps slashing back, not backing down. Grace and the others keep up the fight, dodging and countering attacks from the gargoyles. Grace moves quickly, kicking away an enemy and sending it crashing into a wall. Kay is on guard, watching her back while another gargoyle tries to sneak up, but Grace is sharp and keeps her focus, not letting any enemy get too close. The group is staying on the move, trying not to get surrounded. Kay keeps his guard up, knowing the fight isn't finished yet, and tells the group they still need to help Clive. Sylvia quietly thanks him. The group gets ready to move again, being more careful this time. Kay thinks about how Clive pulled most of the monsters' attention, but after a while some enemies start to break away and attack the others, so they need to stay alert and heal when possible. After about 30 minutes, the group is exhausted and catching their breath. The hunter gargoyle they just defeated was way tougher than normal monsters. Kay is glad he could keep an eye on its HP the whole time, saying he would have teleported everyone out if things got too dangerous. Grace explains that hunter gargoyles are usually raid monsters that need big teams to defeat. Even so, she believed they could handle it thanks to having both a tank and an enchanter in their party. After defeating the hunter gargoyle, the group checks the drop and finds a valuable magic bow called the Yorishiro. Sylvia shows it off, saying it's extremely valuable because the monster was so strong. Kay confirms it's a magic bow and notes they could sell it for a good amount. Sylvia says a sword of the same quality would fetch a similar price. The group agrees to sell the bow since no one can equip it, planning to split the money equally. With this, they've finally earned enough gold for the day. After selling the valuable loot, everyone's share comes out to a huge amount, almost like a life savings for some of them. The party feels relieved, and lucky things went well, especially since the day almost didn't happen. Clive gets credit for being the MVP, but he admits he couldn't keep all the monsters' attention the whole time. He thanks the others for their support, especially the enchantments and Grace's help. The mood is light, everyone's satisfied, and they feel they got really lucky today. Kay checks his arm, confirming it's fine, and not broken, thanks to his quick habit of putting up a magic wall for defense. The group feels relieved, and there's a bit of a wholesome moment. Grace slides closer and wants to thank Kay for protecting her. Kay says he'd be glad to keep adventuring with them, since they've helped each other out so much. There's a sense that they're becoming a real team. After everything that happened, the group confirms they're sticking together. They're not disbanding after this quest. Grace is especially excited and looks forward to working with everyone from now on. Everyone is in good spirits, and the battle has brought them closer as a team. The chapter closes with a sense of stronger bonds and new adventures ahead. After the battle, things quiet down. Grace quickly notices the main character is hiding an injury, showing her sharp instincts. He checks the wound and realizes it's not too serious thanks to his healing magic. But he still can't fix everything, especially the blood loss. He starts thinking about leveling up his magic and wonders if the guild has books that can help. He's caught off guard by how much Grace worries about him. The group meets up the next day, talking over tea. One member's armor is badly damaged from the last fight, with the gargoyles, and needs at least 3 days to fix. Since they can't head to the dungeon right away, they agree to wait. The main character sees this break as a chance to do something useful in the meantime. With extra time on his hands, the main character grabs a book and decides to practice new magic for 3 days. He manages to quickly learn basic fire and wind spells, like Fireball and Wind Cutter, and realizes he can learn any type of magic since he has no set affinity. His fast progress surprises the others, especially since it took them much longer to learn the same spells. As they walk together, Grace is impressed by how fast the main character has picked up multiple types of magic, enchantments, and even healing. She remembers a legend about a sage who could use all 6 types of magic and healing without any tools. The main character checks his own status and finds the odd title Corporate Slave Sage. Grace says he's already qualified to be called a sage, at least from her point of view. On the 3rd day of training, the main character thinks about how he could protect himself better if his magic wall activated instantly when hit. He works through the night to enchant his gauntlet with this new effect and asks Grace to attack him, wanting to test if the magic will trigger automatically when his gauntlet touches an enemy. Grace attacks with her sword, testing the new enchantment on his gauntlet. The magic wall activates, but it triggers too early, showing it didn't work as planned. He asks her to try again, realizing he needs to adjust the timing for it to work right. The training continues, with Grace landing more hits to help test the enchantment. The main character apologizes for making her help so much, but she lightens the mood by mentioning a popular cafe and its famous fruitcake. He quickly agrees to the idea, and they keep practicing, both more motivated. After several tries, the main character finally gets the enchantment to work. Grace is excited for him and reminds him not to forget his promise about the cafe. He agrees, smiling. The group then heads out together, ready for their next move. Clive shows up with upgraded armor, explaining that he used the money they got from fighting gargoyles for both repairs and improvements. Another party member happily shows off her new, enhanced witch hat, looking the part of a true mage. The main character notices her new style but decides not to ask how much it cost. The group talks about rumors of a dark elf spotted nearby. Grace explains that dark elves are a dangerous race, smart, fast, and able to use magic, so it's rare to see one in a dungeon. They also joke about how Grace shares some traits with them, like being strong and having a striking appearance. Everyone stays alert, knowing dark elves can set up ambushes. As they move through the dungeon, the group notices Grace is still a bit tense. Kay reveals he can sometimes see through walls and spot enemies like gargoyles before they attack, even when hidden by magic. The path they take is safer than usual, with Grace watching for danger, and they only encounter weaker monsters like goblins and orcs, making steady progress. The group takes a break for lunch, feeling the mental strain from being on high alert. Kay notices something interesting about Clive, but hesitates to ask about his past since he can't share his own story either. Clive notices Kay's curiosity and is open to talking about it. Clive shares that his pocket watch is a keepsake from a teammate who died in his old party. He remembers failing to protect everyone during a raid, which caused the loss of his whole team. Looking at the watch reminds him to never let his guard down again. He later found out the group replaced him with a higher-level tank, and he ended up working with some of his former teammates afterward. Clive explains he chose to leave his old party after the tragedy, not because anyone forced him out. He doesn't blame his former teammates, understanding it was about survival. He only asked to keep the pocket watch as a reminder of someone important he lost, and as something he never wants to forget. Kay notices the pocket watch is actually a magic clock, though it doesn't work well for telling time. He guesses the previous owner was good at cooking, surprising Clive. Clive confirms it, saying the watch's owner often cooked for the whole party, and that, despite the clock's flaws, it's a precious keepsake for him. The group realizes Clive's treasured clock is actually a cooking timer. They get ready to continue their journey, noticing that other adventurers are rare on these lower floors. As they reach the 5th floor, the place feels empty and dull. The party finds signs of a fight and destroyed gear, hinting that ogres might be on this floor. Ogres are huge and powerful, dangerous unless unarmed. Kay knows he and most of the party wouldn't survive a direct hit, except maybe Clive or Grace. He stays alert, ready to use escape magic if things get bad. As the group explores deeper, Grace senses that someone nearby is using magic, but she can't tell what kind. Kay decides to boost everyone's abilities with enhancement magic just to be safe. They prepare themselves, staying alert for any surprises. The team gets ready for the next challenge, switching up their formation with Clive and Grace taking the lead. Kay enchants Clive's gear with reactive magic for extra safety. As they prepare to move, Grace stops Clive for a moment. Clive remembers his promise to protect his teammates no matter what. As the group moves forward, Kay gets a bad feeling about the next room, sensing something dangerous might happen. He brushes it off as just his imagination, but the tension in the air remains as they enter. Kay notices strange numbers and letters in the room and realizes something is off. He warns the group that someone is hiding nearby. Grace tells him to use magic to force the hidden person to reveal themselves, even if it doesn't cause much damage. Kay gets ready to cast a spell to expose their location. Kay's magic hits its target, revealing a hidden dark elf with an intimidating presence and a sword. The dark elf seems amused that someone managed to find him, and Kay realizes this is his first encounter with a dark elf who can speak their language. The dark elf taunts the group, asking if they know where they are. He compares them to insects drawn to danger, and reveals they've just walked into an ogre's nest. Suddenly, a strange sound fills the room, hinting that something big is about to happen. A strange magic paralyzes the group, leaving them unable to move as the dark elf watches. Kay realizes it's a debuff called Clancy's Restriction that slows everyone down. The dark elf explains the ogres get angry if their prey tries to escape, so he needs the group to stay put, making the situation even more dangerous. The group is stuck, unable to move or focus enough to cast magic, including any escape spells. Kay realizes just how bad things are. The dark elf, amused, leaves them behind, hinting that the incoming ogres are going to be a real problem. Kay checks the dark elf's stats and sees the title Arabella's Disciple, but most of the information is hidden. He struggles to find a way out of their situation, realizing this kind of trouble was always a risk. The whole group feels powerless, unable to move or use magic as danger closes in. 3 massive ogres appear in front of the group. Kay checks their status and sees they're still bound for over 8 minutes, unable to move. The team realizes just how bad things are, feeling helpless as the ogres approach and attack. As the ogres close in, Clive steps forward, unaffected by the bind. Kay realizes Clive has a high-level debuff resistance skill, making him the only one who can move. Clive uses his taunt skill to draw the ogres' attention, buying time for the group. Clive bravely draws the ogres away from the group, telling everyone to trust him. The others worry about him handling it alone, but Clive faces the monsters head-on, determined to protect his friends, even at great risk. Kay realizes Clive is risking his life fighting the ogres alone, since he can't use magic. Grace points out that they have to wait about 8 minutes for the bind to wear off, but Clive might not last that long. Kay struggles with the idea of just watching as his friend puts himself in danger to protect everyone. Clive takes a heavy blow from one of the ogres, his defense barely holding. The others watch helplessly, realizing just how strong the ogres are. One hit is enough to shake Clive's stance and put him in serious danger. Clive struggles as the ogres attack him from all sides, his shield already dented from the blows. Kay notes there are still 7 minutes left on the bind, and if this keeps up, Clive will have to endure many more hits, putting him in even greater danger. Clive takes another heavy hit from the ogres, but keeps fighting to protect his friends. One of his teammates calls out to him in worry as he continues to struggle against the overwhelming force of their attacks. Clive takes another direct blow, this time to his right arm, but manages to defend himself with his shield and magic wall. Kay notes that there are still over 6 minutes left on the bind, and Clive is struggling to keep up under the constant attacks. Clive pushes back against the ogres with all his strength. Kay shouts to him to use the pillars in the room for defense. Clive quickly adjusts, dodging between the pillars to make it harder for the ogres to land a clean hit. Clive uses the pillars to his advantage, dodging and blocking as best he can. But one of the ogres manages to pin him down, pressing its weight and strength against him, making it even harder for Clive to fight back. Kay shouts for Clive to escape, but the ogre keeps pounding him. Clive struggles to get free, taking heavy blows as the others watch, unable to help. The situation keeps getting worse, and Clive is barely holding on. Clive is down to half his HP and was forced to drop his sword after a heavy hit. There are still 5 minutes left on the bind, and Kay realizes Clive can't move too far, or the ogres will go after Sylvia. Clive pushes himself forward, knowing he has to keep the attention on him to protect the team. Clive keeps blocking the ogre's heavy hits with his shield, but his right arm is getting worse. Kay can tell that if Clive takes another strong hit, he might not be able to stand up again. Clive is knocked back hard, barely holding on. Clive is struggling against the ogres, clearly reaching his limit. Kay tells him to use return magic to call for help. Clive is shocked, not wanting to leave his friends behind, but Kay insists, asking him to understand the situation. Clive refuses to leave his friends behind, thinking that if he does, it means he hasn't changed or grown since his past failures. He braces himself to keep fighting, even as the ogres charge at him, and the bind time keeps ticking down. Clive keeps blocking the ogre's attacks, taking hit after hit with his shield. He looks exhausted but determined, pushing through the pain to protect his friends and stand his ground, even as the onslaught gets heavier. Clive keeps blocking a barrage of hits from the ogres, his shield and armor taking the brunt of the attacks. He's clearly struggling, but he's still hanging on, refusing to back down despite being surrounded and battered. Kay sees that Clive is exhausted but still holding on. Kay encourages him, asking Clive to protect them for just 3 more minutes. Clive, battered but determined, stands tall, and Kay tells him this will be his victory, if he can endure a bit longer. Clive sees the timer finally reach 0. At that moment, a wave of energy and relief washes over him. Realizing the bind is worn off, he starts to recover his strength, feeling amazed that he made it through. Kay realizes that the long hand on Clive's pocket watch was enhanced with contact magic. When the hand touched the stopper, it triggered an Elder Heal, healing Clive at the crucial moment. Kay had told Clive to prepare a return spell, thinking the heal might not activate because of the bind. But Clive resisted and endured long enough for the magic to work. Now, fully healed, Clive stands strong, and Kay declares that this battle is Clive's victory. Kay tells Clive not to let his guard down yet, and says he needs to buy them 3 more minutes. He suggests using the pillars for cover, and says his magic wall enhancement should let Clive take at least 1 hit. As a last resort, Kay even offers himself as a shield. Clive understands and confidently prepares to face the ogres, telling everyone not to worry. The group finally breaks free from the debuff after 3 minutes. Sylvia immediately casts debuffs on the ogres, slowing them down and weakening them. Confident, she tells everyone to leave the rest to her, and thanks Clive for protecting her. Sylvia steps up and tells everyone she'll turn all the ogres to ash. She freezes the entire group of ogres in a huge spike of ice magic, showing off her power. The ogres can't move, and are totally overwhelmed. Kay and Grace are impressed by Sylvia's magic. Grace warns Kay not to get close, because the magic is really strong. She's using high-class magic called Inferno. Sylvia looks relieved and happy, saying, "Thank goodness." Clive admits he wanted to protect Sylvia, but in the end, he was the one who got saved. Kay thanks Clive for everything. Clive feels like he should be thanking Kay, but Kay says Clive's resolve is what protected everyone. The group feels a sense of relief after surviving the fight, and they all gather together, showing respect and gratitude. Kay then says that even though it's a weird time to bring it up, their adventure for the day is over. The whole party looks a bit tired, but also kind of satisfied as they get ready to leave the dungeon. Grace talks with Kay, confirming that Kurt, the Dark Elf, isn't just a random bandit. She says he's actually Arabella's disciple, which means he's basically a demon and a much bigger threat. The mood shifts. Both Kay and Grace are getting ready for a serious battle ahead. Kay blames himself for what happened, saying he should have realized a demon could show up after hearing rumors about adventurers getting attacked. Grace quickly disagrees and tells him she doesn't think he's at fault. Grace points out that, even though running into a demon was unexpected, Kay's plan ended up saving not just Clive but everyone else too. She reminds him that he was the one who helped her learn reactive magic, and combining it with healing magic was a smart move. Grace says she keeps getting surprised by Kay the more time she spends with him, and there's a soft, appreciative vibe between them. Kay warns Grace that Kurt is a dangerous guy and could get adventurers killed. He wants to stop Kurt, but admits his real reason isn't that pure. He feels like he's fated to meet him again. Kay asks Grace to help him, even if he has to fight Kurt alone. He remembers Rodney, who tried to take his power before, and realizes both Rodney and Kurt serve Arabella and have the same dark attribute. Kay thinks it's better to prepare to face Kurt properly, since there's a real chance Kurt will come for him in the future. Grace tells Kay that she has her own destiny to fulfill and needs to keep hunting demons. She admits she can't do it alone, and says she needs Kay just as much as he needs her. Kay thinks to himself that he only wanted to talk about swords, but things took a turn in another direction. Kay admits it's obvious why he helped Grace go after such a dangerous person, even though it put him at risk. He thinks about how Grace has the swords to defeat demons, but they only have meaning when she actually uses them. If he said he just wanted to help her, it would sound like he was trying to win her affection, but it's not just about that. In the end, he laughs it off, saying it was just a whim, but deep down, he knows their dependency binds them together. They need each other. Grace teases Kay, saying he took his time just to call it just a whim. Kay thinks he can't just sit back and let Grace risk her life for her destiny, especially since, with the shackles of Clancy, his own risk of dying is lower than hers. But he also knows he can't drag Grace or Sylvia into danger just because of his own feelings. He wonders if Grace will understand how he feels, though he doubts it, and admits it would be great if she could. Neo gets upset, loudly disagreeing with what's being discussed. Kay kind of expected that reaction, even though he thinks it's understandable. In the background, others notice the commotion and wonder what's going on. The story then flashes back to 3 days earlier. Kay talks to a woman about the 4-man party policy being lifted. She explains that a lot of adventurers were against it, and it caused trouble with dividing rewards and organizing parties for exploration. Kay notes things were going fine up until then, but now it seems more complicated. Kay and Grace talk about what to do next, since Clive still needs 3 days to get his equipment fixed. Grace suggests the two of them could go look for Kurt in the meantime, instead of just waiting around for Sylvia to regroup. Neo suddenly appears and asks what they're planning. Kay starts overthinking. He realizes they didn't tell Sylvia, so it might look like they ditched her and went to the dungeon alone. He also doubts Sylvia would just accept an explanation later, even if it's for her safety. It's a bit of a mess, and Kay feels the misunderstanding is just going to get worse. Neo gets mad and calls out Kay and Grace for wanting to go after the Dark Elf by themselves. She says it's not just about hunting a big target or getting rewards. They should have invited everyone, since if it's dangerous with 4 people, it's even more dangerous with just 2. Kay tries to reason that it is dangerous, but Neo isn't having it, and even calls Kay stupid to his face. Kay's a bit hurt by that, but he knows the longer this drags on, the angrier she'll get. Neo is clearly serious about being part of the group and doesn't want to be left out. Kay and the group sit down for a serious talk. Clive makes it clear he doesn't agree with excluding anyone from the plan, and asks Kay if he really thinks they'd just drag him down. Kay quickly denies it, but the real problem comes out. He and Grace have personal reasons for going after the Dark Elf, and don't want to put their friends in danger after barely making it out alive last time. Neo, though, is frustrated. She admits she was upset, especially thinking back to when Clive was overwhelmed by monsters and surprised by Kay's decision to have him use the return spell. At first, Neo even thought Kay was trying to abandon her, but after seeing the healing magic in action, she realized the plan was more complicated than she thought. Neo questions Kay's way of thinking, asking why he'd go so far to save Clive, even at the risk of his own life. She points out that Kay always chooses to make sure at least one of them survives, even if it means taking a hard choice. She saw him differently after that, realizing he thinks of everyone as comrades, not just allies. Neo insists that if Kay really sees them as his friends, he should let both her and Clive help, instead of trying to carry all the burden alone. Neo breaks down in tears, but Grace comforts her with a hug. Kay sees this and quietly admits defeat. He realizes he can't do everything alone. In front of Clive and Sylvia, he finally admits he was wrong, and explains that he and Grace have to go after the Dark Elf for a reason, but it's too risky to do it by themselves. Kay finally asks the group for help, calling them comrades. Clive smiles, and Grace comforts Neo, who's still emotional. Neo scolds Kay for making her cry, wishing he'd just said that from the start, while the group laughs and the tension fades away. The next day, everyone is still thinking about demons, which used to be just stories for kids in this country. Now that they've seen one, it's hard to believe, and some of them still feel like it isn't real. Kay reminds the group that failing isn't an option. As they prepare to move out, everyone confirms they're ready. Kay feels the need to get stronger, and the whole party is determined to face what's ahead together. 2 weeks have passed since their last big fight. The group has gotten more used to each other's personalities and has grown closer as a team. They talk about different types of magic, like earth and wind, and how the Dark Elves are strong with wind magic. Sylvia tries to teach earth magic in her own way, making it sound simple, but Kay struggles to keep up with her learning speed. He manages to learn water magic in that time, though he thinks asking Sylvia to be his teacher might have been a bit much. The group reaches the 8th floor of the dungeon, getting more careful since the monsters get stronger the deeper they go. They realize they haven't had many problems before because most monsters couldn't use magic. As they're going down the stairs, Grace senses something off a finely made secret hallway built into the wall. When she strikes at the wall, it turns out it's not just a wall but actually a monster disguised as part of the dungeon. Grace smashes through the fake wall, revealing it was actually created by illusion magic, not just a regular trick. The group realizes elves often use this kind of magic to hide things, and in this case, the catalyst was the wall itself. They're already tired from searching the dungeon, so they decide to stop and rest instead of pushing forward, knowing it would be risky to go further in their current state. Before they settle in, they notice another wall ahead that's sealed with powerful magic, and Sylvia considers if she can open it. While sitting alone, the protagonist overhears Grace and Sylvia talking and realizes they're together in the bath. He gets distracted by his own thoughts, but quickly snaps himself out of it, deciding to stay focused. He notes that Grace and Sylvia seem to be getting along pretty well. Their shadows are visible through the door, but he tries not to overthink it and keeps his mind on the task at hand. The protagonist stands by the door, overhearing Grace and Sylvia joking with each other while they're in the bath. He tries to focus on his magic training, but he gets distracted by their conversation and the thought of them together. Realizing what he's doing, he snaps back to his original goal, practicing earth magic. He reminds himself, he just needs to make a small hole for his spell, not get sidetracked. After causing a bit of trouble in the city with his magic, Kay apologizes to the group, saying he only meant to practice. Clive points out that usually someone would get thrown in jail for that, but they got off with just paying for repairs. Sylvia teases that it might be her fault too. In the end, everyone is just glad that Kay managed to learn earth magic, and Grace notes that at least he seems genuinely sorry about the incident. The group finds the secret hallway hidden again after removing the catalyst, but the wall didn't restore itself automatically. They all realize that someone might be waiting for them behind the fake wall, probably luring them in on purpose. With their guard up, they prepare for a fight, knowing this is likely a trap and that the enemy is expecting their arrival. Sylvia quickly uses her magic to unlock the door. The group gets ready and heads inside together, stepping into a dark hallway, ready for whatever's waiting for them. As they step into the dark room, they start checking their surroundings. Kay realizes there's another passage behind the wall and senses someone besides Kurt inside. The group quietly gets ready, unsure if what's hiding there is a demon, but they can't tell for sure yet. The group is tense, discussing whether they should withdraw, but Kay thinks it's risky either way, since the enemy probably already knows they're here. Clive is told to protect Sylvia, no matter what, since normal taunts and targeting won't work on demons. They check for traps and decide to move forward together, trusting there's no bind magic set up for now. Everyone gets ready as they step into the next room. As the group enters the room, they're surprised by the appearance of a massive ogre with skulls around his neck, exuding a powerful presence. Kay quickly checks his status and realizes this isn't just any ogre. He's the Ogre King, Gino, and he's also a demon. The group immediately recognizes that they're up against a serious new threat. Kay faces off against the demons, realizing they're not ordinary enemies. The man with the mark on his face is surprised. Kay survived the bind spell and even found the hidden passage. The Ogre King Gino claims this territory as his own and prepares for battle, while the other demon steps back, letting Gino take over, saying he'll provide support if needed. The death match is about to begin, and the atmosphere turns tense as everyone gets ready for a tough fight. The group braces for battle as Kay tells Clive to watch the Dark Elf. Grace gets ready to fight, keeping her focus. The Ogre King makes his move with a quick technique, aiming for a sudden strike. Weapons clash, and everyone is tense as they realize how dangerous the enemy is. Clive is caught off guard by the speed of the attack. The fight gets intense as Sylvia tries to use magic on the Ogre King, but he easily shrugs it off thanks to his strong magic resistance. Grace and Kay warn Clive not to take the attack directly, realizing that he might not survive a head-on clash. Clive braces himself as the Ogre King prepares a heavy blow, and the group quickly thinks about how to handle this dangerous enemy. Clive goes head-to-head with the Ogre King, blocking the massive attack with his shield. He quickly activates a magic wall just in time to defend himself. Even with the shield and barrier, the force of the blow is intense, pushing Clive back, but he manages to hold his ground for now. Kay enchants her weapon and charges in, but the Ogre King suddenly launches a strong kick toward her. She reacts quickly and throws up a magic wall to block the attack, managing to defend herself right before the impact smashes through the floor and walls. The fight is intense, with both sides going all out. Grace is hurt but tries to get back up, and Sylvia quickly uses Elder Heal on her. Meanwhile, the Ogre King attacks with a wave of force, easily blocking Sylvia's magic and showing that basic spells aren't enough to stop him. The group braces themselves as the Ogre King proves he's not someone to mess with. Kay sees that his attack barely hurts the Ogre King, Gino. The real threat comes from Gino, so Kay knows they need to take him out first. The enemy elf warns Kay that he'll regret not focusing on Gino, and Kay decides to provoke him and draw his attention, even if it doesn't feel great being targeted like that. Kay keeps his cool as he faces off with the Ogre King, Gino. He tries to draw attention away from his allies, planning to seal away one of Gino's strengths if he gets the chance. Kay realizes the real problem isn't just Gino's strength, but his insane vitality that lets him ignore light wounds and keep fighting like nothing happened. As the battle heats up, Kay gets ready for a direct clash, determined to shut down at least one of Gino's advantages. Kay launches his plan, catching Gino off guard. The Ogre King suddenly finds himself unable to move properly. Something is sealed, and his body reacts with shock. Kay smirks, knowing his trick landed, while Gino's huge frame stumbles, and the flow of the fight starts to shift. Sylvia draws Gino's attention by jumping in and attacking him, breaking his stance just as he tries to use his full strength for a powerful swing. Kay notices that Gino always targets the last person who hit him, and thinks about using this habit to their advantage. The team starts to coordinate, setting up for their next move. Kay tells Clive and Sylvia to hold on a bit longer. He knows his attack won't really hurt Gino, but it just needs to get his attention. Gino's focus shifts, and he charges straight for Clive, just like Kay expected. The group keeps working together, sticking to their plan to deal with Gino's habit of targeting the last person who hits him. Sylvia launches a magic attack, sending a hail of stones down on Gino. Kay sees that the plan is working. Gino is getting hit and distracted, which buys the group some time. Clive and the others keep pressuring Gino, trying to figure out their next move. Gino keeps going after the last person who attacked him, just as Kay expected. The elf in the background realizes Sylvia can use powerful magic. Kay sees that even though Gino's pattern is risky, it actually helps their group's strategy, since Gino doesn't notice their setup. Kay thinks if Gino were more strategic he would catch on, but instead, Gino just charges ahead, letting them control the fight. Gino realizes something is off, but it's too late. Grace calmly prepares her sword, while Sylvia stays alert, sensing something is about to happen. Kay notices that Gino finally figured out their plan, but by now, their setup is already complete, and Gino can't stop it. Kay looks confident as he holds his weapon ready, with a knowing smile. There's a close-up of his determined face, showing he's focused on the next move. Grace is by his side, looking relieved and almost emotional, clearly trusting him in this crucial moment. Grace is catching her breath, looking exhausted but okay. After helping Kay with her magic, Kay checks on her, making sure she can still move. He remembers how using demon swords before would drain her energy and leave her passed out, but this time she seems fine. Kay then checks the stats on his weapon, the Lightning Axe Gilbert, which is surprisingly light for its size and has powerful abilities. He notes that, unlike before, he didn't pull out the fire sword this time, but instead used the ice sword Viola. Kay realizes the axe has insane attack power, but its magic drain is intense. It burns through energy super fast, so he can't use it for long. Both the weapons he's using are strong, but with their high SP consumption, he knows he can't let the enemy figure out this weakness. One of the demons starts to recognize the weapons as the lost weapons of Yurvan, but Kay doesn't let it distract him, since they still have to fight either way. Even while thinking this, he stays focused, careful not to reveal his limit to the enemy. The demon warns Gino that Kay's weapons aren't normal, and tells him not to let his guard down. The fight heats up as Clive charges in, blocking Gino's axe with his shield. Sylvia gets ready to attack, magic building up in her hands, and the whole party works together to push back against the two demons. The action is fast, with both sides trading blows and magic attacks, trying to break through each other's defense. Grace lands a powerful hit on Gino, catching him off guard and forcing him back. Kay quickly follows up, coordinating the attack and drawing Gino's attention with a shield block. The team starts gaining momentum, working together to keep the pressure on. Gino, though hurt, still isn't out, and tries to shrug it off, but it's clear the group's teamwork is starting to pay off. Kay sees Gino blocking his attack with the axe, but that was actually part of Kay's plan. The axe starts to spark with electricity, and Gino gets shocked hard by the weapon, letting out a loud scream as the trap works perfectly. Sylvia quickly realizes something is happening with the axe, as sparks fly from it. Kay recognizes that this is the item break skill of the Gilbert axe. Suddenly, he warns Clive to watch out, noticing something is about to happen just in time. Clive manages to react just in time, blocking the attack with his shield. Kay didn't expect the enemy to act so quickly, but now he sees that Gino took a lot of damage from the axe. The other demon comments that there's nothing his weapon can't cut, warning Clive to be more careful next time. Kay thinks that if they keep this up, they have a good shot at winning, but he's worried about handling both Gino and Kurt at once. Kay is told to focus on the Ogre King since he's the only one who can actually defeat him. The group reassures Kay that everyone already made up their minds and is ready for this fight, so he should trust his friends and just do what needs to be done. With this encouragement, Kay feels his worries lighten, and he gets ready to take down the big enemy first. The hero faces off against the Ogre King, determined to take him down first. The Ogre King isn't making things easy and stands ready, expecting a tough fight. As the battle heats up, the Ogre King resorts to sneaky moves, trying to gain the upper hand. The hero picks up on these tricks but stays focused, keeping the Ogre King's attention on himself, preparing for what's next. The hero stays alert as the Ogre King rushes in, smashing everything in his path without much thought. The ground splits, and debris flies everywhere from the Ogre King's wild attacks. Even with all the chaos, the hero keeps his cool, reading the Ogre King's reckless moves and getting ready for what comes next. The clash between the hero and the Ogre King gets intense, with both sides trading blows and shattering the floor. The hero holds his ground, focused and steady. Elsewhere, his three allies prepare to face their own tough battle, putting their trust in him to handle the Ogre King. The hero knows his friends are giving their all and hopes they'll make it through, feeling the weight of the trust they placed in him. The fight takes a sudden turn when the Ogre King chooses not to block with his axe, surprising the hero. The Ogre King faces the attack head-on, using his own arm instead. The hero stays quick on his feet, not letting up, as both of them keep pushing forward with everything they've got. The hero suddenly realizes the Ogre King is planning something. As he tries to piece it together, a surprise twist happens. Sylvia, a witch, jumps into the scene, catching the hero completely off guard. With her staff in hand, she gets ready to join the fight, and the whole mood shifts as backup arrives right when it's needed. Sylvia stands confidently with her staff, while one of her allies steps in front, sword at the ready to protect her. The sudden move catches everyone by surprise, including the Ogre King and his side. The whole group reacts with shock, realizing that the fight just got a lot more complicated now that reinforcements have joined the battle. The tension spikes when the hero sees that the Ogre King threw his axe, totally ignoring his own fight. Sylvia and Clive stand ready, but the hero feels a wave of shock and worry about what just happened. Even with the situation turning risky, he forces himself to focus, knowing that if he loses control now, everyone could be in danger. He pushes aside his doubts, realizing he can't afford to freeze, and there are things only he can do right now. The hero charges forward with everything he's got, swinging his weapon hard at the Ogre King. The attack lands clean, sending the Ogre King reeling back from the force. In that moment, the hero manages to break through, landing a heavy blow that shifts the momentum of the fight in his favor. The hero powers up his weapon, crackling with energy, and swings down with a strong, electrified strike. The blow hits hard, surprising his opponent. But just as the hero thinks he's got the upper hand, he notices something's off. The scene quickly shifts, showing a status screen and a mysterious elf observing from afar, hinting that there's more going on behind the scenes than he realized. The hero starts to question the Ogre King's strange move, throwing his weapon to someone else's fight, instead of focusing on his own. He realizes there's no way the Ogre King did it just to help an ally, and senses there's more to the situation. As the hero tries to piece it all together, the Ogre King starts to vanish with a grin, hinting that he had his own plan all along, something the hero still doesn't fully understand. Sylvia kneels beside Clive, who's badly wounded and lying on the ground. The hero quickly rushes over, checking on his friend while fighting back pain from his own injury. Clive slowly comes to, and everyone's relief is clear, but the atmosphere is still heavy, as they realize the fight took a toll on them all. The hero checks Clive's condition and sees that things are bad. Healing magic restores Clive's HP, but his wounds keep bleeding and his HP drops again. The hero realizes his healing can't stop the blood loss, and if nothing changes, Clive won't make it. Desperation starts to set in as he looks for another way to save his friend. Clive, badly hurt and coughing up blood, tries to speak his final wish to the hero, telling him to defeat the enemy. Sylvia and the others react in shock and pain, but there's no time to mourn. The elf enemy steps forward with a cold smirk, taunting the group and making it clear that the fight is far from over. The enemy offers to wait while the hero says his goodbyes, but the hero isn't having it. He steps forward, determined and ready to fight, telling the enemy there's no need for any more farewells. With his weapon in hand and resolve in his eyes, he makes it clear it's the enemy's turn to face what's coming next. The elf demon calmly explains that he's already accomplished what he wanted and has no reason to stick around. He points out that demons don't really work together, each following their own interests. While the hero tries to stop him and questions his next move, the demon simply says he's heading for the capital city and dares anyone to chase him. Just as he's about to leave, the hero launches an attack, trying to cut off his escape. Sylvia steps up, refusing to let the demon escape. With determination, she starts casting her magic, launching a powerful attack straight at him. The demon braces himself as her spells rush toward him, showing that she's not backing down without a fight. The demon first shrugs off Sylvia's magic attack, thinking it won't work, but quickly realizes she's combining earth magic with spatial magic in a clever way. He's caught off guard, admitting she's got talent. He even tells her that if she masters high-level magic, she could become the strongest mage among humans. Sylvia stands her ground, showing she's not someone to underestimate. The demon calmly makes his exit, saying he has to leave, and looks forward to meeting the group again. The hero and Sylvia try to stop him, but he's already too far ahead. Sylvia looks frustrated and disappointed, knowing their enemy slipped away this time. But it's clear the fight isn't over yet. The group rushes to Clive's side, but it's too late. He's already gone. Sylvia and the others can only watch as their friend lies still, his armor stained with blood. The loss hits everyone hard, marking the end of a tough fight and leaving a heavy silence in the room. Sylvia breaks down in tears next to Clive's body, struggling to understand why he would give his life to save her. The loss hits her hard, and she sobs quietly, feeling the weight of Clive's sacrifice. One of her friends comes over to comfort her, but nothing can really ease the pain in that moment. Clive finds himself in a peaceful field filled with flowers, slowly realizing he's already dead. He tries to make sense of what happened, remembering the wound on his back. Suddenly, he notices someone approaching, hinting that he's about to meet someone important in this serene afterlife. Clive sees a familiar figure in the field and starts to approach, asking if he can join her. He's at peace, knowing he was able to protect his friend this time. With a gentle smile, Clive looks back one last time, feeling proud of what he accomplished before moving on. Sylvia holds onto Clive's pocket watch, asking if it can be delivered to his family. But she reveals that both she and Clive have no family left. It's something common among adventurers. The hero realizes she's from a well-off background but doesn't push the subject, sensing it's not the right time. In the end, Sylvia decides to keep the watch herself. Holding on to the memory, Sylvia quietly agrees to hold on to Clive's watch, her emotions clear as she grips it tightly. The story shifts to thoughts about time, how it never stops for anyone, except for those who are gone. Like Clive, the hero reflects on moments when he wanted time to move faster or slower, realizing he can't waste any more of it. He knows he has to keep moving forward, even if that means chasing after the demons and facing what comes next. Sylvia catches the others as they're about to leave, insisting she won't be left behind. She declares her reason for going after Kurt. She wants to do what only she can do, even knowing the dangers. Sylvia is determined to head to the capital, find Kurt, and defeat him herself. She makes it clear she's doing this on her own terms, showing her resolve to keep moving forward. Sylvia calls out to Kay and Grace, asking them to come with her to the capital. She knows it'll be dangerous, but wants them by her side. As the three set out together, Kay realizes their roles have kind of flipped, with Grace and him now following Sylvia's lead. Even so, he can tell Sylvia just wanted to be with them, and the group heads off, ready for whatever adventures their journey might bring. The group sets out for the capital, not sure what the future holds, whether it's danger or happiness ahead. Each of them is determined to keep going and do what needs to be done. Time moves on, and together they push past their sadness, ready to face whatever comes next in this new land. The group arrives at the post town, Rhein. After a long journey, they're tired from all the walking, and glad to finally take a break. Grace teases Kay for being weak, while Sylvia tries to keep things positive. Even though they're moving slower than expected, everyone's just happy to look for an inn and get some food before continuing on to the city. The group talks about how expensive travel can be, realizing only nobles can afford carriages while everyone else has to walk for days. Kay starts thinking about the kingdom's social classes, royalty, knights, nobles, and even slaves. He worries about running into trouble with powerful people. They all agree it's risky to sleep outside, so they split up to look for a good inn before night falls, wanting to stay safe as they rest up for the next leg of their journey. Kay and Grace struggle to find a place to stay since every inn is fully booked. Just when it looks like they'll have to sleep outside, Sylvia shows up excited. She managed to grab the very last inn room. The catch: there's only one bed but 3 blankets. Sylvia claims the bed for herself since she found the room, and the others laugh, accepting their spot on the floor for the night. Kay jokes to himself about traveling with 2 beautiful girls as they check out their small, cramped inn room. The bed is basically just a long bench, and everyone realizes sleeping on the floor is actually better. Grace laughs off the situation, and Sylvia ends up letting Grace have the bed since she's been helping out so much. The group settles in, making the best of their rough sleeping setup. The group ends up arguing over who should get the bed, each trying to give it to someone else. Sylvia insists on sleeping on the floor because of her bad sleeping posture, while Grace and Kay try to convince her otherwise. In the end, Kay gets a bit fed up with the back and forth and says if nobody else wants it, he'll just take the bed himself. The whole scene turns into a lighthearted mess, showing how close they've gotten as friends. After a long day of walking, the group finally settles in for the night, Kay on the bed, and Grace and Sylvia sleeping close by on the floor. Kay tries to calm his mind and just get some rest, but can't help but feel awkward with the two girls sleeping right next to him. He tells himself not to overthink it, and to just enjoy the rare comfort of a bed, hoping he doesn't end up rolling off in the middle of the night. Kay wakes up to find himself awkwardly tangled up with Sylvia on the floor, having rolled off the bed during the night. Grace catches him in the act, and questions what he's doing. Flustered, Kay tries to explain, but things just get more embarrassing as Sylvia wakes up too, confused by the situation. It's a chaotic and funny start to their morning. Grace teases Kay about falling off the bed, saying she was worried he'd crush her. Sylvia playfully joins in, admitting she ended up holding Kay because it was warm. Kay's embarrassed but relieved nothing weird happened. The mood turns light and a bit flirty, with Grace making sure Sylvia didn't do anything to Kay during the night, and Kay scrambling to keep the peace. Grace is still annoyed with Kay, so he knows he has to tread lightly. The group gets ready to leave the inn and continue toward the capital city. As they set out, a local warns them about inspectors stationed on the main route. These inspectors aren't exactly known for being friendly, so the group thanks him for the tip and prepares to be extra cautious on their journey. The group arrives at an inspection point, set up with more soldiers than usual. They hope their guild cards will be enough to get through, but the guards single them out, especially since Sylvia and Grace's appearance makes them stand out, even under their cloaks. The soldiers call them aside for a full check, making it clear things might not go smoothly from here. The group gets taken to an office for a full check by an older man in charge. He explains it's just standard procedure due to high alert and claims they need to prevent forgery. Kay isn't happy about how quickly the man assumes they'll cooperate, but for now, they have no choice but to play along and see what happens next. Kay gets checked by the guards and is quickly cleared. But the officer says they need to inspect the girls more thoroughly, hinting it might get a little invasive. He tries to act polite, but Kay notices the man's creepy smile and is clearly annoyed, realizing these checks are probably just an excuse to harass Sylvia and Grace. The guard tells Sylvia and Grace to take off everything, including armor and clothes, which shocks them. Sylvia argues there's no point if they're not even checking their stuff. The guy threatens that if they don't comply, they'll have to use other means to prove they're not hiding anything. Kay is frustrated, trying to figure out how to get past the check without getting stuck. The group quickly decides they need to act before things go too far, but magic isn't an option since it's forbidden in the city. A knight suddenly walks in, interrupting the inspection. The group is tense, wondering what's about to happen. The knight immediately questions what's going on. The guard tries to cover himself, claiming it's a misunderstanding and that he didn't touch the girls. The knight calls him out, saying stripping girls for inspection is shameless. The guard tries to insist he's just following procedures, but the knight's presence has clearly shifted the power in the room. The armored woman arrives, instantly giving off a strong presence. Kay thinks she looks like a Valkyrie. She checks their guild ID, realizes they're just adventurers, and tells them they're free to go. Kay figures out that she's basically telling them to leave right away. As they walk out, the group feels the weight of her gaze. But at least they're off the hook for now. Kay checks Celestia Pascalus's status screen and is shocked. Her stats are insanely high for her level, even stronger than the church's apostle who turned into a demon. She has a ton of high-level skills and top-tier gear. The thing that catches his eye the most is the Blessing of Clancy title. It seems different compared to the usual Apostle of Clancy. Overall, he realizes she's on a whole different level from normal knights. Kay explains that Dame Celestia, also known as the Silver Valkyrie, is a well-known figure in the kingdom. She became the leader of the Western Knight Order at a young age and was basically the face of the kingdom for a while, thanks to her strength and looks. Even though Kay hasn't met her before, he recognizes her reputation. But Kay and the others think it's odd that someone like her is here at the checkpoint near the capital, instead of guarding the border. They suspect something unusual might be happening in the capital. Kay starts thinking that if there really is something going on in the capital, it might be related to demons. He wonders if a demon showed up and Ansel and Celestia was sent to deal with it, but admits he might just be guessing. Sylvia points out that if Celestia was actually heading to the capital for something official, she'd probably bring maids to help her prepare for meeting nobles. But since Celestia had armed knights with her, it looks like she's just on the move with her squad, maybe ready for a fight. Sylvia adds that maybe the maids were left behind since they'd just get in the way during a battle. In the end, they're not sure what Celestia's real goal is, but agree that the situation seems strange. Kay and his group notice that the atmosphere in the kingdom has changed. Inspections are happening in places that are usually quiet, and even soldiers who normally stay put are now moving around. It doesn't feel like they're just chasing one demon anymore, especially since Celestia was with so many soldiers. It actually feels more like preparations for a war or some kind of internal conflict. Kay keeps wondering if all this activity is somehow connected to Kurt. As they continue their journey, the group is told to move to the side as soldiers on horseback come down the road, signaling that something big is about to happen inside the kingdom. The feeling of tension in the air just keeps growing as time passes. Kay and the others watch as the soldiers rush by on horseback, clearly in a hurry. The group can't quite figure out what's really happening just by standing on the side of the road, so they decide to find a higher spot to get a better look. It's obvious that something major is going down in Ansel, with the whole army now on the move and heading somewhere fast. The sense that they're about to get pulled into something much bigger only gets stronger. The group observes the marching army and tries to estimate its size, counting around 500 cavalry and 1,000 foot soldiers. They discuss how the western boundary is a key location for defense, and if most of Celestia's knights are here, that would leave the western border exposed. The group starts to get a bad feeling, realizing that if all these soldiers are being called away from the border and sent toward the capital, something isn't right. Even if it's just a relocation, it doesn't make sense to leave a strategic area so defenseless, so there has to be another reason behind this sudden movement. Kay and Celestia briefly exchange looks as the knights move forward. The group decides there's no point standing around with questions, so they make their way toward Ansel, hoping to find out what's actually happening in the capital. Grace asks if something is wrong, but Kay brushes it off, focusing on moving forward with everyone. They pick up the pace, determined to get answers themselves. The group enjoys a meal together, looking relaxed for the first time in a while. Grace seems proud of herself for finding a good restaurant, though she admits she just asked around for recommendations. Kay and the others follow her lead as they walk through the town, planning their next move. Grace gives directions, telling everyone to keep going past the inn and take the right turn. The mood is lighter, with everyone moving together and trusting each other's instincts. As the group walks through the street, Grace suddenly gets cautious and tells the others they're being followed. She quickly takes the lead, signaling everyone to stay alert. Spotting their pursuer, Grace doesn't hesitate. She steps in front, draws her sword, and knocks the person to the ground. With her blade at their neck, she warns them not to move, making it clear that she's in control and won't tolerate any threats. The group stands ready, prepared for whatever comes next. After Grace stops the man, Kay checks his status and finds out his name is Gilles Raymond, a 3-4-year-old holy knight. Grace questions if he's from Celestia's Knights, but Gilles says he doesn't know the other man lying on the ground. Kay can't find any obvious clues in his status, but notices that Gilles can't use magic or store things in an inventory, which means he's not great at espionage. Grace points out how unprofessional it is to follow someone around while still carrying your own ID, making it clear that Gilles isn't much of a spy. The group realizes that this guy is just a regular knight who needed his ID to move around, not someone trained for sneaky missions. Grace inspects the knight insignia and confirms it's from the Western Knight Order under Celestia. Kay figures out the man's name is Gilles Raymond and that he's really part of Celestia's group. After things calm down, Kay tells Gilles he'll return the insignia next time they meet, and Gilles asks him to send his regards to Dame Celestia. Gilles looks a bit defeated as he prepares to leave. Kay decides it's better to let Gilles go without causing any more trouble, even though Grace suggests roughing him up a bit more. He thinks if they let Gilles leave unharmed, they'll look harmless to the knights and avoid unnecessary problems. Kay also figures Celestia might be testing them, and that Gilles being caught so easily just proves he's not really cut out for spying. Kay decides to keep the knight insignia for now, thinking it could be useful and might give them a chance to meet Dame Celestia again. He gets a bit flustered when the others tease him, insisting he's not just interested because of her looks. Meanwhile, Sylvia points out that Celestia seems to be drawn by something hidden beneath the surface, not just what's obvious. Kay tries to move the conversation along, but he feels like the others don't trust his motives at all. Kay thinks about why Dame Celestia is returning to the capital and realizes she must have a specific reason for her movements. Since she allowed them to pass through the checkpoint earlier but sent someone to follow them, it's clear she's suspicious. Kay figures out that whatever caught her attention isn't something obvious or simple, and maybe she wants to investigate something in secret without drawing attention. Sylvia starts to realize where Kay is going with his reasoning, feeling there might be something bigger happening behind the scenes. Kay thinks there's a real chance Dame Celestia is searching for demons, even if it's just a guess for now. He feels there's something new and chaotic brewing, and Celestia's true intentions are still unclear. That's why he wants to meet her again, to figure out what's really going on. The group sets off the next morning, heading toward the capital city Ansel. They want to find out what Celestia is really up to. The city is close, and if all goes well, they plan to reach it by the afternoon. The scene shifts as they walk through the busy streets, getting closer to their destination. The group arrives at the city gate and notices the Western Knight Order stationed outside, not allowed to enter the castle. Even though it's already afternoon, the army shows no sign of moving. The scene looks tense, since surrounding the capital with so many soldiers could mean different things, and nobody is sure what will happen next. Sylvia throws out the idea that the knights might have come to attack the castle. Her guess surprises the group, but Kay admits it actually makes sense, given how things look around the capital. The group walks into a lively part of the city, full of merchants and decorated streets. Everything looks well kept and festive, with people selling goods and offering discounts. Kay notices how the castle's presence makes this whole area feel special and important, but he's also on alert for anything that seems out of place. Kay realizes he's the only one who hasn't been to the capital before, while Grace and Sylvia both mention visiting a long time ago. The group starts looking for an inn, thinking it's a good idea to secure a room early. Kay asks a local vendor for directions, and after some friendly conversation, they get clear instructions on how to reach Inn Street. They seem relaxed, mixing a bit of sightseeing with their plans. Kay asks the vendor about the knights encamped outside the city. The vendor explains that the group is the Western Knight Order, led by the Silver Valkyrie. There was a buzz in the city because people thought the knights would come in and spend money, but they just set up camp outside, which was a letdown. The gatekeepers didn't even know the knights were coming, and the city got lively when they arrived. The vendor says he saw the Silver Valkyrie leading about 10 knights to the castle, but hasn't seen her since. Kay finds out that the rest of the Western Knight Order returned to a building in the capital that's assigned to them. But it's pointless to even try to go there because the guards won't let anyone in. Kay realizes that the other 10 knights who went with Celestia also haven't left the castle since then. He thinks they might be able to find some unexpected information if they keep looking around. Kay and the group talk to the innkeeper, who mentions how prices were raised because everyone expected the Western Knight Order to come into the city. Kay is surprised the prices aren't as high as he thought. They decide to go check out the building used by the Western Knight Order. As they approach, they notice a crowd gathered outside, and they start to wonder what's going on. Grace notices something posted outside the building and decides to check it out. She moves through the crowd to get a closer look, with Kay and Sylvia waiting nearby. Kay thinks to himself that Grace is perfect for handling situations like this. Kay calmly says that the notice is about Dame Celestia being arrested. Grace and Sylvia are shocked, their faces showing surprise as they process the news. Kay confirms the news and explains that Dame Celestia was arrested by the kingdom under suspicion of trying to start a rebellion. Grace asks how Kay knows that. As Kay thinks, he starts connecting the recent events, feeling like everything is finally starting to make sense. The scene then shifts to the next morning, with the group heading out together through the city. Kay is deep in thought, wondering what actions the Western Knight Order will take now that they should have heard about Celestia's arrest. Despite the chaos from yesterday, the Knight Order is still stationed outside, and things seem oddly calm, almost like nothing happened. Grace asks about Kay's plan. With a determined look, Kay decides to formally introduce himself to the Western Knight Order branch, holding the knight insignia in his hand. Kay approaches the gate, thinking how he doesn't look like a knight, and is clearly just a guy with 2 girls tagging along. He greets the guard confidently, claiming he's Gilles Raymond from the Western Knight Order, and asks to be let through to meet the knight captain. The guard warns him that faking an ID is a crime, but since the insignia is real, he has no choice but to treat it seriously. After a moment, the guard asks Kay and his group to wait. Kay doesn't know who the vice captain is, but at least they made it past the main gate. Soon, they're told to come inside, as the vice captain will meet them instead of the knight captain. Kay and his group are led up an elegant staircase and brought into a formal office. The vice captain waits behind a large desk and welcomes Kay by addressing him as Gilles Raymond. Kay notes to himself that the vice captain is still using the old name, even though he's clearly not the same person. The atmosphere is tense as the meeting begins. Kay gets asked to introduce himself, but he flips it and asks for the vice captain's name first. The real Gilles Raymond is revealed, standing there with his status shown. The vice captain, Redmond Revner, introduces himself. Kay plays along, giving his name and introducing Grace and Sylvia as his companions, stating he's an adventurer. The mood is a bit awkward since the vice captain doesn't really get Kay's joking around. Kay explains his reasons for coming. First, to return something that belongs to a knight, and second, to meet the knight captain. The vice captain is a bit stiff, but thanks Kay for returning the knight insignia, and also apologizes for having someone follow them. Grace and Sylvia stand quietly while Kay handles the talking. The atmosphere is still pretty formal, but there's a bit more understanding now between both sides. Kay learns from the vice captain that the knight captain isn't present, so they can't arrange a meeting. The vice captain doesn't know the exact reason why someone was sent to follow Kay's group either. Kay realizes that Dame Celestia is imprisoned, suspected of causing a rebellion, and is now awaiting execution in the dungeon. He starts thinking about how to get more information from the vice captain, considering provoking him a little to see if he'll talk. The vice captain gets defensive, insisting that Dame Celestia didn't do anything wrong, but refuses to say much more. When pressed about where Celestia is being held, he avoids answering directly, only saying she's not in the dungeon. Kay realizes he won't get anything by asking directly. Sylvia tries provoking the vice captain, asking if he's just sulking and not planning to help the knight captain, which visibly annoys him. The group keeps pushing, hoping to get more info out of him. Kay suddenly apologizes to the vice captain for his earlier attitude and changes his approach, asking directly if Celestia is free to meet people if she wants to. The vice captain says Celestia is staying in the castle by her own choice and doesn't need to be rescued. Kay realizes this is his chance and hints he might be able to help her situation. The vice captain seems skeptical, doubting what a regular adventurer could do, especially since Kay can't even get into the castle. Kay gets closer to the vice captain and tells him to think carefully. Why would Celestia send someone to follow him if he couldn't do anything? Kay confidently says he can do it, implying he has a plan. If the vice captain doesn't believe him, Kay is ready to drop the conversation. Kay thinks to himself that if there's a demon in the capital, and if it's Kurt or not, he'd be able to change the situation. He's basically bluffing, hoping the vice captain will bite, and wonders if Celestia's situation is linked to the demons somehow. But the vice captain doesn't fall for it, so Kay decides to look for another way to search for the demon. The vice captain finally reveals that Celestia is under house arrest. She can't leave the castle, but meeting her is possible. The vice captain is torn, not knowing what to believe anymore. But deep down, he's sure Celestia is innocent. She never wanted a rebellion. He explains the real reason she was arrested. The summon to the capital was fake, which led them to move the army without permission. Because of this, Celestia is now under suspicion of rebellion and waiting for her trial. Until then, the Western Knight Order can meet her, but only at certain times. Kay quietly asks what he needs to do to be able to meet her. The vice captain says that Celestia isn't resisting and is ready to take any punishment. She even blames herself for not noticing the fake summon. Kay realizes that the knights are all serious people, but Celestia is on another level, super earnest. He thinks that meeting her could help change the situation. Kay asks if he can just go with the Knight Order when they meet her, and the vice captain tells him he can if he becomes part of the Western Knight Order. Kay says he wants to meet her, so now he's asking what he should do next. The vice captain laughs and hands Kay the knight insignia, making it official. He says that since Kay is now part of the Western Knight Order, he shouldn't have any problems getting into the castle. The vice captain calls Kay Jill Raymond to keep up the disguise, and Kay accepts the insignia, determined and ready for what comes next. Kay gets details about Celestia's situation. She's staying in the guest room at the very end of the Eastern Tower, watched over by a maid, and with 2 guards posted at the door and windows. It's basically impossible to meet her without being noticed. The vice captain asks Kay what he actually plans to rescue Celestia's life, her reputation, or both, since saving her might mean sacrificing something else. Grace explains that the punishment for treason is death, just like in any other kingdom. Kay thinks he might be able to save Celestia's life, but her reputation is basically out of his hands. They start talking about the fake letter that led to the army moving on the surface. It looked exactly like a real order from the capital, even having the king's official seal. This makes everyone question how it could be fake if it matches the real thing so well. They find out that the king himself never gave the order or wrote the letter, even though it had the official seal. Only the king, the Minister of Internal Affairs, and the Prime Minister can use that seal, but all 3 deny sending the letter. That means someone faked the document, and Kay realizes there are 3 possible explanations behind this setup. The 3 possible explanations for the letter are discussed. The king might have forgotten he sent it, one of the 3 with access to the seal is lying, or there's another way to use the seal, which seems unlikely. Kay learns he can meet Dame Celestia after her lunch, but only he can enter the castle since there aren't enough knight insignias for everyone. The others will have to wait outside. Grace tells Kay it's too risky to go into the castle alone, since they don't know how Dame Celestia will react. Kay tries to reassure her, saying he's not going alone because Raymond is with him. Grace points out they can't fully trust Raymond. If Dame Celestia orders him to arrest Kay for faking his identity, there's no guarantee he won't follow that order. Kay admits it's not risk-free, but thinks they don't have much time left. Grace warns Kay not to go alone since they can't predict how Dame Celestia will react. Kay says Raymond is going too, so he won't be alone. Grace isn't convinced, pointing out that they can't fully trust Raymond if Celestia orders him to arrest Kay for sneaking in. There's no guarantee he'll ignore that. Kay thinks she's right, and realizes it's risky. But time is short. If his guess about Celestia's situation is correct, Kay and Raymond enter the palace, with everything going smoothly so far. Laura Aries, age 29, is on duty, watching them enter. Moments earlier, Kay explained his plan. He wanted to observe as many people as possible inside the royal palace before heading to Dame Celestia's room, thinking about how being seen by many witnesses could be important for what comes next. Kay follows Raymond through the palace corridors, keeping quiet and sticking to Raymond's instructions. They decide to take a long route to Celestia's room, blending in with other people and passing by several staff members. Even though it was Kay's idea to take the detour, he realizes how complex the palace layout is and thinks he'd have a hard time finding his way back alone. Kay and Raymond keep moving through the palace, trying to avoid drawing any attention. So far, nothing seems out of place or suspicious. But suddenly, a sharp-looking man with a mustache appears, giving off a strong, intimidating vibe as he walks past. Kay immediately feels something is off, and the tension in the air rises. Kay spots the man with the mustache and immediately recognizes his presence as important. Raymond explains that this is Cardis, the Minister of Domestic Affairs, a powerful figure in the kingdom. After Cardis passes, Raymond introduces himself and Kay to the guards, saying they're there on behalf of the West Night Order to meet the dame. The guards at the door step aside, letting them in. The guards inform Raymond and Kay that they have a strict 15-minute window for their visit. Raymond introduces Kay as one of his men to make things go smoother. The maid is ordered to leave, and the guards clarify that they'll only have 10 minutes alone, without anyone else present. With the rules set, Raymond and Kay head inside to meet the dame. Raymond and Kay enter the room and find the dame quietly standing by the window, lost in thought. She seems completely isolated, unable to even respond to the men from her own order. The tension is obvious, but Raymond decides to move forward with the meeting. Kay and Raymond introduce Jill as one of their own, which makes the dame suspicious. She quickly recognizes Kay as the adventurer she met before and demands to know why he's there. Kay decides to provoke her, acting casual and throwing out a taunt to get a reaction, hoping to break through her pride and see her true feelings. Kay is introduced to the dame as someone who claims he can save her from her current situation. The dame, however, insists that she doesn't need saving and tells them to leave. Kay realizes that before he can help, he needs to clear up the misunderstandings about her situation. Red, watching the exchange, starts to understand that this isn't the first time Kay gets involved like this. Kay sits across from the dame and calmly questions her about why she returned to Ansel so quickly. She claims it was simply because she received an order to return, but Kay doesn't buy it. He points out that the order was only part of the reason, there's something else motivating her. The dame grows tense, asking what he's really trying to say, as Kay presses her to admit the truth. Kay presses the dame again about why she returned to Ansel. She tries to deflect, but Kay shifts the topic, asking if she found what she was searching for when she tailed him. The dame, with a subtle reaction, admits she already found what she was looking for, which makes Kay realize she's basically confirming the order wasn't her only reason for coming back. The dame looks at Kay and asks what he really knows. She's trying to figure out why he's so confident about the whole situation. Kay, keeping it cool, tells her it's simple, hinting that he's figured something out and isn't backing down. Kay faces the dame with a confident look, saying he knows what she's after. The dame is caught off guard and tries to keep her composure, but his words shake her. She's skeptical, questioning how he could possibly see through her, but she's clearly unsettled. Kay realizes his guess about why the dame returned is probably right. He doesn't bother asking her to trust him and just says he's pursuing his own goal. The dame sits there quietly, and Kay decides it's enough for now, even if he didn't fully reach her this time. Kay realizes the dame is using her guilt and the prince's will as an excuse to stay passive under house arrest. He challenges her, saying if she doesn't want to just sit there and wait for death, she should stand up and fight for herself, even if it means being called a traitor. The others are surprised, wondering if he's really suggesting she break out. Kay says he doesn't want to fight alongside someone who has no will to fight. The vice captain gets pissed and shouts at Kay, accusing him of claiming to know how to save the dame. Suddenly, guards interrupt and demand to know what's happening in the room, stopping the argument. Kay realizes that making a scene would just bring trouble for the Western Night Order. He quickly brushes off the guards' suspicions, saying everything is fine. Then, he changes the subject by asking them to call the maid so he can request some water for the dame. The guards reluctantly agree and leave to get the maid. The mood is tense, but Kay tries to keep things calm, giving a reassuring pat on the back to his companion. The maid enters the room, and Kay and his ally get ready to continue their plan. Kay and Grace, who is now disguised as a maid, pass by each other with serious looks. Both are focused on their roles, knowing the next step is risky. The scene then shifts outside, showing the Western Night Order branch. Redmond gets frustrated and questions Kay's actions, saying he just made things worse for the dame. Kay stays calm, saying everything has gone as planned so far and apologizes, mentioning he can't reveal the rest of the plan yet. He asks Redmond for a favor and tells him he won't be able to see him for a while because of what he needs to do. Before leaving, Kay tells Redmond that if anyone asks, he should say he doesn't know anything about what's happening. Kay checks the situation and sees that everything is still under control, there's no commotion yet. He's impressed by Grace blending in as a maid and jokes to himself about how she looks in the uniform. He thinks about how the rest of the plan depends on her and hopes she can pull it off inside the palace. As the sun begins to set, he reminds himself to stop daydreaming and focus on what's next. Sylvia meets up with Kay and asks how things went. Kay says the plan mostly worked, and now Grace just needs to help Celestia make her final decision. Sylvia hugs Kay, acting affectionate to avoid drawing suspicion as they walk at night, since it looks less suspicious if they're close like that. Kay and Sylvia walk together at night near the castle, being careful not to be spotted by Grace. Sylvia asks about the plan if the soldiers don't move, but Kay reassures her that if something happens outside the walls, the soldiers on patrol will definitely respond. Kay tells Sylvia to just follow along with the plan, since they have some time to work with. Sylvia hugs Kay again, and he agrees to keep going as planned. Kay is keeping watch outside, waiting and checking the time. Suddenly, he notices a signal and raises his hand to respond. He recognizes that this is the sign they've been waiting for, so he quickly prepares to move forward with the next step of the plan. A bright flash of light goes off, catching the guards by surprise. They panic, thinking it might be an attack, and quickly react to the situation. Kay stays calm, watching from a distance as the plan starts working. He knows everything is moving forward as intended. Kay walks in and finds the girls already safe and waiting for him. Grace, Celestia, and Sylvia are together, looking ready for the next step. They all seem relieved and prepared to move on after the escape. Celestia admits she decided on her own to leave the room, feeling it was pointless to stay and wait for her execution. Grace confirms everything went as Kay planned. Kay asks if Celestia is unhappy, but she just thinks the palace guards were weak. Kay realizes from her reaction that Celestia returned to Ansel because of something related to a demon, and he thinks if he mentions a demon nearby, she'll have no choice but to escape house arrest. Kay sets everything up to make Celestia believe she has no choice but to act. Grace infiltrates to help with the escape plan. Kay confronts Celestia, hinting she'll just let a demon go free if she does nothing. At night, Grace is supposed to open the window and break a plate as a signal. Using that excuse, she'd leave the room and move into the courtyard. All of these actions are designed to push Celestia into making a decision, and in the end, Celestia chooses to escape the palace to hunt down the demon herself. Grace knocks out the guards near the window, clearing the path for Celestia. The group quickly leaves the room and makes their way out of the building. As they reach the outside, Laura is surprised to see a stairway made of solid rock leading down, making their escape even smoother. Kay explains why they used the light as part of their plan. He noticed Grace was surprised when her sword produced light, which is rare in this world, since people can usually only create light close to their bodies. The guards were startled when they saw light from outside the wall. Normally, magic users can create light only with direct magic flow, but Grace's sword could transmit it, making it seem unusual. As for the stone stairs, Sylvia's magic was used. While it's easy to make a single wall, making multiple structures at once is tough. But Sylvia had already shown she could create complex rock formations to block enemies in the past. This made her the perfect fit to quickly create the rock stairs they needed for the escape. Kay is glad that the plan worked, without needing to hurt anyone or destroy part of the palace, since doing that would be a serious crime. They used the light and rock wall magic to escape, something the guards never expected, especially using rock stairs to get out of the royal palace. After the escape, Kay notes that most people wouldn't think escapees would stay close to the palace, but his goal is still in the city, so there's no need to leave Ansel yet. Even with all the commotion, Kay wants to keep moving towards his real objective. Celestia asks if there really is a demon inside the city, wanting to confirm it for herself. Kay confirms it's true, but says the demon they're currently chasing isn't Kurt. Still, there's a good chance Kurt is also in the city, just not found yet. Kay explains that, besides the demon they're after, there's at least one demon hiding inside the royal palace. He wants to ask Celestia something important related to this. Kay says he'll call her Celis instead, and she agrees, but points out she's just a fugitive right now. Kay then asks about the letter that ordered her to return to Ansel, showing he's interested in the details and wants her to explain more about it. Celis explains that the letter mentioned a demon possibly being in the capital and ordered her to return to Ansel with 1,500 knights as quickly as possible. Kay thinks that the Western Knight Order returned because of the king's summons, but also suspects it's related to the demon. Celis confirms that's correct, and adds that their main goal is to uncover the demon's identity. Kay remembers that when he asked Redmond about this, Redmond didn't say anything about a demon, which matches Kay's suspicions. Kay asks if Celis has always been chasing demons, even before the letter. Celis says that after the letter mentioned a demon, she decided to return quickly with her men, skipping the usual investigation. She explains she had spent about 4 years at the western border and met someone who traveled between the kingdom of Roal and their territory. That person once visited Harlan during a festival and said he felt a demon was there. Since then, Celis has been secretly investigating demons, although she admits she thought it was a joke at first. Kay asks how many people know Celis is chasing demons. She says about 10 officers in the Night Order know, but nobody else should, as she was able to move the army because the information didn't leak. Kay then asks if she still has the letter. Celis explains it was confiscated and should be with the Minister of Inner Affairs, who arrested and investigated her. Kay figures out that there are just 2 possibilities left. He's confident now and says they have all the information they need. When asked about the next step, Kay decides that the group will go to the royal palace the next morning. Kay says their next move is to take down the Minister of Inner Affairs, who he suspects is actually the demon Cultus. He's confident it's him, since that's the person who sent the letter and set everything in motion. The others are shocked, and someone points out that the real minister might have been replaced by the demon. Kay explains that even if they recover the letter and make it public, it won't work in their favor. The minister Cardus is actually hoping they'll do that. When asked about their plan to get into the palace, Kay says they'll just go through the front gate, despite security getting tighter. The group heads to the royal palace the next day, all wearing cloaks. Celestia warns them that if they enter together, everyone could be arrested. The group knows the risks, but decides to move forward anyway, blending into the crowd as they approach the palace. Celestia steps forward, removing her cloak and revealing her armor. She introduces herself as the captain of the Western Night Order, Celestia Pascaris. The crowd reacts in shock, recognizing her as the Silver Valkyrie. The knights at the palace entrance pay close attention to her bold entrance. Celestia tells the guards they're here to see the king and demands the gate be opened. The guards hesitate, knowing she was previously arrested under suspicion of rebellion. Celestia raises her voice, ordering them to open the gate. The knights are tense, clearly intimidated by her reputation and strength. None of them want to challenge her. Her presence alone makes the soldiers back down. Kay notices this new group of soldiers looks different from the others. The man leading them is Felix. Celestia tries to convince Felix to let them meet the king, saying everything will be explained. Felix isn't interested in fighting, but he reminds her that she's still under arrest for suspicion of rebellion and can't just return to the capital as she pleases. Felix gets ready to fight, attacking Celestia from a distance with his spear. Kay checks Felix's stats and realizes he's the elite guard captain, with strength high enough that he might actually be able to defeat Celestia in a fair fight. Celestia blocks Felix's attack with her shield, holding her ground. The fight is stopped as someone announces that the king will see Dame Celestia, telling both of them to put away their weapons. The tension drops as the group is ordered to stop fighting and head in to see the king. Celestia and her group are escorted inside by armed guards. A woman, likely royalty or someone important, stands waiting for them. Celestia bows respectfully and apologizes for the trouble she caused, addressing her as Your Highness. The woman welcomes Celestia back, showing a gentle smile, while Felix stands nearby, watching the exchange. The group is introduced to the Prime Minister, Ola Ren Renox, who is a woman and appears to be part of the royal family. Celestia formally asks for an audience with the king, explaining her reasons. Ola Ren listens and agrees to hear them out, asking them to follow her. Kay checks her status just to be sure, but sees there's nothing suspicious. She's 41 years old, level 22, and her class is Prime Minister. The party prepares to present their case to the king. The group enters the throne room and stands before the king. Kay notices that the Minister of Inner Affairs, Cultus, is present as well. He quickly checks Cultus's status. He's 48 years old, level 16, but his class shows as unknown. This makes Kay suspicious, since the class being hidden could mean Cultus isn't what he seems. Kay checks the status of everyone in the room, but doesn't find anyone else suspicious, besides Cultus. There are a few people with high levels, but none match up to Celestia or Felix. Kay thinks it's best to be careful since Cultus could still be dangerous if he's a demon. Celestia steps forward, bows, and thanks the king for seeing them. The Prime Minister questions Celestia, asking why she went against the king's order and why she brought her companions when requesting an audience. Celestia admits she's sorry for going against the king's will, but explains she came fully armed to protect the royal palace from traitors hiding inside, and her group is there to help with that goal. The Prime Minister demands proof from Celestia. Kay steps in and asks the king if he has ever actually seen the letter that Celestia received with his own eyes. The king replies, no. The minister says the letter is in their custody and that they already know it was faked. Kay asks if anyone cares about what was actually written in the fake letter. The king agrees that this is indeed concerning, showing interest in the content and not just the fact it was a forgery. Kay interrupts before the minister can read the letter, saying there's no need because he already knows what's inside. He explains the letter says there is a demon in Ansel, which is why Celestia brought her troops to deal with that threat. He then adds that demons actually exist and hints that there's one right there with them, surprising everyone in the room. Kay suddenly uses his power and targets the suspicious minister. The attack catches everyone off guard, causing chaos in the room. The minister is hit with a barrage of force and then sinks into the floor, leaving the others shocked and confused. One of the women asks why Kay did that, clearly startled by what just happened. The minister pulls himself up from the floor, looking furious. He tries to speak but is interrupted. Celestia quickly moves in front of the king and the prime minister, shield raised, and tells everyone to get back. She'll protect them. The guards close in, ready for things to escalate. Grace asks if they should attack now while they have the chance, but Kay says the minister isn't transforming yet. He insists they need to reveal his true identity to clear Celestia's name. As tension rises, the minister begins to transform, tearing off his shirt, and Kay says that even though it'll be risky, they'll have to fight him head-on this time. The minister fully transforms into a demon, growing horns and his body getting covered in markings. The people watching are shocked, and the Prime Minister thinks to herself that a demon really did infiltrate the royal palace. Kay checks the demon's status screen, but most of the stats and skills are unreadable. He notices that after transforming, the demon's level is now 53 higher than before, and probably much stronger overall. Kay also notices the demon's weapon is just a massive sword. He thinks that, without knowing what skills or magic the demon has, he'll have to be very careful. The demon's form gives him an ominous feeling, and it reminds him of someone named Rodney. Kay tells Celis to be careful, warning her that the demon might look weird but is actually really strong. Celis says she'll rely on Kay for support. As the fight is about to start, Celis activates a bunch of buffs for herself: might, protection, speed, concentration, breath of magic, and breath of body. She looks focused and ready for the battle. Celis smiles and says she couldn't ask for better support, then asks Kay if he's an enhancer. Kay says yes. Meanwhile, the demon clenches a piece of paper and gets mad, saying he just had to read it to finish his plan. Kay says he can't just let the demon do whatever he wants, since the letter only had the order to return to the capital and nothing more. The demon loses it, yelling at Kay and blaming him for ruining his perfect plan, promising to never forgive him. Kay lays out exactly how the setup worked. The fake letter sent to Dame Celestia in the West didn't just order her to return, it also included information that there was a demon in the capital, so she had no choice but to rush back. The villain then switched out the real letter with a fake one that didn't mention the demon, and confiscated the real letter as evidence after arresting Celestia under suspicion of rebellion. Kay explains that the plan was set up so that, no matter what Celestia said about the demon, no one would believe her. If she tried to say she heard about a demon, the letter could be used to easily refute it, since the fake version doesn't mention any demon at all. On top of that, no one would expect that even the already questionable letter she received had been faked again. Basically, it was a scheme to remove Celestia without exposing the demon's identity. Kay thinks that confirming his theory should have cleared Celestia's name, but he knows Caltus is still a dangerous demon. Caltus acknowledges Kay's insight. Then, Celestia steps forward, declaring she'll be Caltus's opponent, and the battle against the demon begins. Celestia charges straight at Caltus, shield raised and sword ready, calling him out to fight her. Kay stands back, letting her take the lead. The battle kicks off right away, with Celestia attacking fast and Caltus barely able to block her blows. The fight is on. Celestia easily blocks Caltus's heavy attack with her shield, using just one hand, which surprises everyone. Kay wonders if her shield is boosted with magic. Caltus tries to break through her defense, but Celestia stands firm. Kay gets ready to use magic and prepares a magic wall, thinking it might help if things go bad. Celestia keeps blocking Caltus's attacks with her shield, and cracks start to form. Suddenly, Sylvia spots an opening and attacks with her magic, shattering part of Caltus's weapon and catching him off guard. Celestia and the others press their advantage. Sylvia's attack didn't deal enough damage to Caltus. Kay quickly realizes he can't let Caltus target Sylvia. Caltus uses a skill to resist further attacks, but then Grace jumps in, swinging her sword at Caltus with all her strength, trying to break through his defenses. Grace lands a solid blow with a magic ball spell, catching Caltus off guard and hitting him right in the side. He staggers back in pain, showing the attack actually hurt him. Grace stays alert, ready for his next move, while Caltus starts to look more cautious. Grace takes a direct hit from Caltus's massive sword and tries to block, but she struggles to hold her ground, wincing from the impact. Kay shouts her name, worried, while Celestia quickly moves in, taking a defensive stance in front of Grace, shield up and sword ready to back her up. The team is getting serious, ready for the next exchange. Kay thinks to himself that Cultus is way more resilient than Rodney ever was. He realizes things could have gone really bad for Grace if Celestia hadn't stepped in when she did. Cultus is probably even stronger than Kay expected. He also notes there's a difference between the sword Grace is using now and the long sword he used against Rodney. Still, at least the magic ball attack earlier was enough to take off Rodney's arm, but Cultus isn't going down that easily. Kay and his group try a new tactic against Cultus. Cultus watches, not really sure what they're planning. Suddenly, Sylvia casts a spell and sends shards of debris flying at Cultus, breaking his guard for a moment. Kay takes the chance to launch a powerful magic attack straight at Cultus, catching him off guard. Kay's magic attack manages to hit Cultus, making him stagger and take some damage. Kay thinks that, even though the attack worked, Rodney and Jin took way more damage from similar hits before. Celestia quickly charges in, keeping up the pressure. But Cultus blocks her strike with his sword, showing he's still got a lot of fight left. Celestia blocks Cultus's heavy blows, not backing down at all. Kay thinks about how Celestia's defense is insane, even strong enough to face the demon head-on. That's why she's known as the Silver Valkyrie. She holds her ground without flinching, showing why she's so respected as a knight. Celestia manages to block the demon's attacks, but each strike forces her back. Kay watches, thinking that her next move is too far away to actually reach Cultus. Even though she stands her ground, the power difference is making it hard for her to close the distance and land a solid hit. Celestia switches things up and uses magic specifically, an attack called Star Shell. Even though it doesn't deal a lot of damage, it hits harder than any move so far. Kay watches, realizing that while it wasn't super effective, it's still the strongest attack they've landed on Cultus up until now. Cultus is surprised, recognizing the move as magic. Kay realizes that magic attacks still work on Cultus, but non-elemental or earth magic doesn't seem to have any effect. He asks if they should try different types of magic. Grace is told to take cover behind Kay, and Sylvia prepares to stop Cultus in his tracks. Sylvia thinks to herself that she was avoiding fire magic to prevent burning anything in the palace, but since they're about to surround Cultus with ice magic, it should be safe. They try using fireball and ice magic against Cultus, but he resists both types pretty easily. Kay thinks to himself that fireball isn't working, so he switches to using an ice ball. Despite being hit with spells and getting caught in the ice, Cultus just breaks out without much trouble. They try wind and earth magic, wind cutter, rock ball, but Cultus resists those too. The group realizes he has resistance against all four basic elements. Kay explains that they're not just attacking randomly, they're testing for his weakness. Only light magic seems to have any effect on him, so now they have to focus on that. The group realizes only Celis can use light magic, so they're forced to rely on her for both attack and defense. Sylvia tells Kay to pull out a weapon and prepare to fight. Celis gets ready to hold off the enemy to buy time, and Sylvia says she'll handle support. Everyone is coordinating their roles for the next phase of the fight. Kay is watching Grace chant her spell, and thinks about how long it takes. He's already memorized the timing. While Grace prepares her magic, Celis is doing her best to keep up the fight, buying the time needed. Right as Grace finishes casting, Kay gets ready for the next move. HP divided by status windows show both Celis and Grace are in the middle of the action. Kay picks up a tall staff that feels super light, almost as tall as he is. He notices the material doesn't seem like wood or metal. It's something else. The Prime Minister reacts with shock, instantly recognizing it as the legendary Staff of Sage, which surprises Kay. He wonders how she knows about it. Kay checks the staff's info and sees it's called the Staff of the Sage, with an SS rarity and a light attribute. He's surprised the Prime Minister could recognize it so quickly, so she must have seen it before. Kay knows this isn't the best moment to test its abilities, so he decides to focus on the fight and think about how to use it later. Kay checks the staff's abilities and realizes that it actually regenerates magic faster than he can use it. He thinks if it works as described, he should be able to enchant everyone's weapons with magic. He also notices his magic is recovering even faster than the numbers suggest. Right now, he decides to focus on using this support magic to help the whole team in battle. Kay explains to her that it's a light element enchant, and although her natural affinity is with the dark element, the enchantment still works on her weapon. Meanwhile, the demon isn't bothered at all when Kay pulls the weapon out of Grace. The demon figures something out after overhearing the group, thinking to himself that now he understands what he meant. Kay notices the demon's words and wonders who he's referring to. Realizing he said too much, the demon attacks again, swinging his weapon at Celestia, who blocks the blow with her shield. Kay thinks about the demon's words and realizes he might be talking about Kurt, the one they are currently chasing. He remembers that Kurt is the only one who survived after seeing him pull a weapon from Grace. Kay wonders what happened to Clive after they split up, noticing Clive's strange condition. He suspects Kurt could be hiding nearby but isn't sure if that's really the case. Kay warns Celis that there might be another demon nearby. He tells her to focus on fighting Kaltus for now, since there's a good chance the other demon, probably Kurt, won't show himself in this situation. Kay thinks, even if Kurt is watching the battle, he won't interfere or join the fight. Kay doesn't know Kurt's real aim but can guess why he's here. For now, they just need to deal with the demon attacking Silas. Kaltus is thinking about how effective the light element enchant is against him, and notes that they still don't fully understand his vigilance skill. As Kaltus attacks, Celis quickly reacts, blocking him and saying that his move won't work on her again. Celis is suddenly struck by powerful demon magic, and she screams in pain. Kay and Grace are shocked, realizing that attack magic was used directly against Celestia,